The week before Christmas, my mother called to tell me not to come home. She said the house was too full. She said my brother's in-laws were driving up from Mount Vernon. She said if I came, things would get tense. And nobody wanted tense, not at Christmas. I did not argue. I did not cry. I did not ask her what I had done. I said, okay. I said, drive safe. I hung up. Then I sat in the cab of my truck at a fuel stop on Route 23 with the engine idling and the heater blowing on my boots. And I looked at the front of my hands for a while. There was a black line of grease across two knuckles that had been there since Toledo. That house cost $312,000. I paid for it in one-wire transfer on the 14th of November, 2 years back. No loan, no co-signer. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, a half-finished basement, a 2-car garage on a street called Ash Grove Lane in Sunbury, Ohio. I earned it one night at a time. 5 years of sleeping in a bunk 32 inches wide behind the driver's seat. 5 years of showers you pay for and coffee you drink standing up. I had taken 4 days off for Christmas. I had turned down a run to Laredo that paid $4,400. Those 4 nights were going to be the only 4 nights that year I slept in a bed. In a house, with my name on the deed. So I opened my banking app and stopped the $600 transfer that went out to them on the 1st of every month. It took 11 seconds. Then I called a different number, and I left a message, and I finished my coffee. 10 days later. The mail carrier came up the walk at 1140 Ash Grove Lane and needed 3 signatures. 3 certified letters. 3 different names on them. My mother signed for all 3. I want to tell you the rest of it, because the letters were not the end. They were the cheapest part. What came after cost me 34 days, $47,000, and one night at 2 a.m. at a scale house in Indiana when a man in a reflective vest told me my name was no good anymore. I had to prove where I was standing on a Tuesday afternoon in February, and I proved it with a black plastic box bolted under my dashboard. Before I get into it, do me a favor and tell me in the comments what state you are watching from. I want to see how far this reaches. And if you have ever been the one who paid for the roof and then got told there was no room under it, hit that subscribe button. You already know how this feels. Here is how it started. It was the 18th of December, 7:12 in the morning. I had just dropped a load of steel beams at a fabrication yard in Marion, and I was sitting in the lot waiting on my next dispatch, eating a gas station breakfast sandwich out of the wrapper. My phone lit up with her name. She always started the same way. 30 seconds of kindness before the actual thing. I had learned that pattern the way you learn a bad stretch of road, and I could tell you exactly where the potholes were. "Are you driving?" she said. "I don't want you driving while we talk. I'm parked. Good. It's supposed to ice up tonight. You know, all the way down to Cincinnati." A pause. "You sound tired." "I'm fine. Mom, you look thin in that picture Bernie showed me." "That picture's from May." "Well," another pause. This one was different. This one had weight in it. Here it came. "Honey, about Christmas." I stopped chewing. I set the sandwich on the dash and I wiped my hand on my jeans. And I said, "What about Christmas? It's just gotten complicated. That's all. Kelsey's parents are driving up from Mount Vernon. They're staying through the 27th. And you know how her mother is about the guest room." She laughed a little. It came out wrong, too high. "And with everybody here, the house is just going to be packed. Packed. Full. It's going to be full." I looked out the windshield at the fabrication yard. There was a man out there guiding a crane operator with 2 orange flags, and the beams were swinging in slow and setting down soft, and I remember thinking that he was very good at his job. It's a 4-bedroom house. Mom, I know what it is. 4 bedrooms and a basement and a garage. Jenna, so the house is full. She switched then. The softness came off her voice like a jacket, and what was under it was flat and practical and rehearsed. I'm not saying you can't come. I want you to hear me say that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that with Kelsey's family here and with how things are between you and Kelsey, it would be tense. And it's Christmas. Nobody wants tense at Christmas. How are things between me and Kelsey? You know how they are. I've seen her 4 times in 2 years. Her wedding, 2 Thanksgivings, and the day I closed on that house. Well, my mother said. There you go. I did not know what that meant. I still don't. It was the kind of answer that sounds like an answer for about 4 seconds. I want to be accurate about this. She did not raise her voice. She never raises her voice. Every sentence she said had a small trap door built into it, a little clause she could climb back through later if she needed to. I'm not saying you can't come. I'm just saying 25 years of that, and I still could not close a door fast enough to catch her hand in it. Behind her I could hear the television going. Morning news, weather segment. The volume too loud the way he keeps it, and I heard him cough. 2 coughs, the dry kind. The one he has had since the drywall years. He did not take the phone. That is the part I keep. Not what she said. He was standing 4 feet from her. He could hear every word of it, and he did not take the phone. We'll do something separate, she said. In January, just the 3 of us. Somewhere nice, like a restaurant, like we were people who met for lunch. I thought about the south bedroom. It has a window that faces the backyard, and a closet with a door that sticks in humid weather. And there is a spot on the floor near the vent where the boards are a shade lighter, because that is where the previous owners had a dog bed. I slept in that room exactly 1 night, on an air mattress. The night we closed, I had a picture in my head of that room the way you have a picture of a place you are saving for later. I already got the presents, I said. I don't know why I said it. It came out before I could stop it, and it sounded like begging. And I hated the sound of it in my own mouth. Well, we can do presents in January, too. I did not tell her I had taken 4 days off. I did not tell her I had turned down a run to Laredo that paid $4,400. I did not tell her I had been thinking for 3 weeks about which morning I would get up first and make the coffee, and whether she still kept the filters in the drawer by the sink or had moved them. I said, Okay. I understand. Are you upset? No, because you sound upset. I understand, Mom. Enjoy your Christmas. I hung up before she could put another trap door in it. Then I sat there. The truck was still idling, the heater still going, and I sat there long enough that the windshield fogged all the way over. Top to bottom, until the crane and the flag man and the whole yard went white and soft and gone, and I turned on the wipers. It was not raining. There was nothing on the glass to move. The blades went across the dry windshield twice, squealing on every pass, and I watched them do it. And then I shut them off and wiped a circle clear with the side of my fist and pulled out onto the road. I should tell you who I am, because the money is the part people get wrong. My name is Jenna Rossiter. I am 32 years old. I own a 2019 Peterbilt and a step deck trailer, and I haul the things that do not fit: steel beams, transformers, pieces of farm equipment with the wheels taken off, anything that needs straps and chains and a permit, and somebody who will not panic when a state trooper pulls alongside to look at the overhang. I started at 24, driving company for an outfit in Findlay. 3 years of that. Then I bought my own truck at 27 with money I had scraped together and a note I hated, and I paid that note off in June of last year. And the day the title came in the mail, I sat in a Love's parking lot in Ohio and read it 4 times. People hear the number and they picture something else. $312,000 sounds like a lottery ticket. It was not. It was 5 years of arithmetic. Here is the arithmetic. You run hard. You take the loads other people turn down because the load is ugly, or the delivery window is stupid, or the shipper is 40 minutes off the interstate down a road that will scrape your trailer. You do not take a hotel. You do not take a week off. You eat what you can heat on an inverter, and you buy a shower when you need one. And a shower is $15 if you have not fueled, and free if you have. You learn where the free ones are, and you sleep in the truck. I want to be honest about what that means, because it is easy to say and hard to picture. It means a mattress the width of a door. It means the engine idling all night in January, so the fuel does not gel and your feet do not go numb, and the noise of that engine becomes the only lullaby your body will accept. It means keeping a toothbrush and a coffee cup in the cup holder. It means learning the clearance height of 17 bridges on your regular lane by heart, so that when you are tired at 2 in the morning, you do not have to think about it. It means you stop counting money in dollars after a while, and start counting it in nights. That was the unit I used, not $4,000. 7 nights. And it means holidays are just days with less traffic. I ran Thanksgiving 5 years running. 2 of those years I ate at a counter in Effingham, Illinois, next to a man named Dwight who hauled cattle and never once asked me a personal question, which at the time felt like the kindest thing anybody had done for me all month. People ask why I did not just get an apartment. I have been asked that a lot, and the honest answer is not sad. It is practical. If you are out 340 nights a year, an apartment is a room you pay rent on so it can be empty. I did the math once in a booth at a truck stop in Indiana, and it came out to roughly $40 a night for a bed I would not be lying in. So I did not get one. That meant I did not have an address. You need an address. You cannot function in this country without one. Your license needs one. Your truck registration needs one. Your operating authority needs one. Your insurance company needs one. Every single piece of paper that lets me work has an address on it, and every one of those addresses was the same address, and I will come back to that. There is a black plastic box bolted under my dashboard, about the size of a paperback. It is an electronic logging device. It has been federal law since 2017. It records every minute I drive and every minute I sit, and it stamps a position on all of it. And it does not care what I say happened. Drivers hate it. I hated it. I called it the babysitter for the first 2 years, and I complained about it to anybody who would stand still. Keep that in mind. That is all I am going to say about it for now. The other thing people get wrong is why I was out there. It was not the money. I want to be clear about that, because it is the difference between a person who works and a person who runs. At home, I was the one who left. That was my whole file. She left. She does not call enough. She missed the thing in April. On the road, I was the one who backed a 53-foot trailer into a dock the day shift guy said could not be backed into, and 4 men stood there and watched, and one of them said, without any surprise in it, "Nice." Out there I had a name. At home I had a category. So when the truck was paid off and the account got big enough, I did not buy a house for me. It did not even cross my mind. And I want you to understand that I am not saying that to sound noble. I am saying it because it was a plan. A woman who sends money is a woman who owes an explanation for why she is not there. A woman who buys the roof over your head is something else. She is settled. She is done proving it. That was the trade I thought I was making. $312,000 for a permanent answer to a question nobody had ever actually asked me out loud. I bought one for them, because I thought that was the thing that would finally move me out of the category. The closing was on the 14th of November, at a title company on the east side of Delaware, Ohio, in a conference room with a fake wood table and a coffee urn that had been sitting on the warmer since morning. My mother wore lipstick. She does that when she is nervous. The stack was about 2 inches high. I signed roughly 40 pages that afternoon, and I signed my name so many times that by the end it stopped looking like a word. Somewhere in the middle of that stack, the closer slid one page across and said, "And this is where we put the title. Just you, just me." I said. My father was standing by the window. He did not turn around. Here is why it was just me, and I want to lay it out because everything that came later grew out of this one fact. In 2009, my father was pulling a rooftop unit up a ladder on a job in Grove City, and something in his lower back let go. He was a heating and air man for 31 years, the kind who gets called back by the same families for 20 years. After that day, he could not carry a compressor up a flight of stairs. And in this trade, if you cannot carry it, you cannot do it. The bankruptcy came in 2011, medical, mostly. They lost the house on Beckley Street, which was the house I grew up in, and they moved into the back half of a rented duplex, and my mother stopped inviting people over. 14 years later, none of that had washed out of his credit the way people tell you it will. He was not getting a mortgage, so the title said my name. Not because I wanted a hold on it, because there was no other way to do it. I said so out loud, at that table, in front of all of them. I want that on the record because of what got said about it afterward. I said, in 7 years, once his file is clean, we'll do a transfer and put it in your names. The closer nodded and said that was common and that we should come back and see her when we were ready. My mother said, "You have to do this." She said it 3 times that afternoon. The first 2 times it sounded like a woman being polite. The 3rd time was in the kitchen, after everybody had walked through, and her hand was flat on the counter and she was not looking at me, and it did not sound polite at all. It sounded like something being taken away from her. I did not understand that then. I understand it now. Then the closer asked for my mailing address, and I gave her the address of the house. That is the whole thing right there. That one line. She asked, and I looked at her, and I said, 1140 Ashgrove. I don't have another one. She did not blink. People give a relative's address all the time. She typed it in, and over the next few weeks I changed it everywhere else too, because it is easier to have one address than none. License, registration, the company, the insurance, every filing and every renewal notice the federal government would ever need to send me went to a mailbox on a post at the end of a driveway in Sunbury, Ohio. It took 20 seconds and it cost nothing, and I did not think about it again for 2 years. While the closer printed the last set, everyone walked the house. My father went around and turned every light on and then turned it off again. 1 room at a time. He ran the kitchen faucet and put his hand under it and stood there feeling the pressure. He opened the panel in the garage and looked at the breakers. 40 minutes and he did not say 1 word, and that was him being happy. I know that about him. Grant showed up 20 minutes late and parked across the end of the driveway so nobody else could get out. He asked what I paid. He asked it before he said hello. Then he walked to the back window, looked at the yard, and said, "Why didn't you get something closer to us? We were 19 minutes from his apartment. Kelsey went through it like a job. That is the only way I can describe it." She knocked on the wall in the hallway with 2 knuckles, listening. She asked how old the furnace was. She asked what year the roof was done. She opened the panel my father had just closed. and she asked who was on the deed. I told her. She said, "Just you," in a light voice, the way you would ask about the weather. And I said yes. And she went on down the hall. Then, about 10 minutes later, at the front door, with her coat already on, she asked me again. I got the joke about a month too late, which is to say 2 years too late. In the basement, on a shelf my father had already claimed for paint cans. There was a shoebox with a rubber band around it. My mother had carried it over from the duplex herself, in her lap in the front seat. It was my grandmother's letters. 30 some years of them. To and from a woman in Zanesville who was her sister. I picked it up. I remember the weight of it, and that the rubber band was old and had gone flat and hard. I put it back on the shelf. That night I slept in the south bedroom on an air mattress, because there was no furniture in the house yet, and I woke up twice because it was too quiet. For 2 years after that closing, here is what leaving the road looked like for me. $600 on the first of every month, automatic out of the business account. My mother called it help. She never once called it money. Property taxes, $5,184 a year, which comes to $432 a month. Drafted automatic. Delaware County is not cheap. Homeowners insurance, $1,656 a year. Paid in one shot every February because I did not want 12 chances to forget it. Water heater, March of last year, $1,340. And that was with my father doing the labor himself and me arguing him out of climbing on anything. Air conditioning compressor. The following July, $2,900. Main drain line. Roots in it, $780, and a crew that tore up a strip of the front yard and left it seeded and matted and looking like a grave for the rest of the summer. I am reading that off a spreadsheet, because I keep one. Everybody in this business does. You learn what a mile costs you down to the penny, and once you learn that you cannot unlearn it, and it follows you into the parts of your life that are not supposed to have a cost per mile. Nobody in that house ever used the word give. My mother used the phrase "you take care of," as in, you take care of the taxes, don't you? Honey, my father said nothing about money at all, ever, not one word in 2 years, which I read as pride and which I have since revised. Grant had his own term for it. He called it the family fund. He said it the way you would say a thing that had existed for a long time and had nothing to do with anybody in particular. Once at a cookout, he told a neighbor the family fund had covered a new gutter, and I was standing right there holding a paper plate. I got out to see them 3 or 4 times a year. That was the honest number. It sounds low. It is low. But there is a mechanical part to it people do not think about. I cannot bring the truck into Ash Grove Lane. 70 feet of tractor and step deck does not go down a residential street with cars parked on both sides and a cul-de-sac at the end that a school bus can barely turn in. So I would park on the state route where the shoulder is wide, at the edge of a soybean field, and walk in, 12 minutes each way. In work boots, carrying a grocery bag. The neighbors got used to it. That is a thing I did not think about until much later, that a whole street had been watching a woman in a canvas coat walk in from the highway 3 or 4 times a year for 2 years, and that at least one of them had been paying attention. There was a Sunday in September when I opened the refrigerator to get a soda for my father. Inside there were 4 bottles of some sparkling water that costs $3 apiece, the kind with the fruit on the label, and in the freezer, 3 cartons of ice cream, not the store brand. My mother has been lactose intolerant since I was in high school. My father does not eat ice cream because of the sugar. Nobody in that house eats ice cream. I closed the freezer and I did not ask. I want you to sit with that for a second. because I stood in the kitchen of a house I paid $312,000 for, and I found something in the freezer that did not add up, and my instinct was not to ask a question. My instinct was to not make trouble. That is what 2 years of being tolerated does. In August, my mother mailed me a check, $4,000, her handwriting, which slants hard to the right and always has, and on the memo line, in the little box in the corner, she had written 4 words, "For your house." There was no note in the envelope, just the check, folded once, in a card with a cardinal on the front that did not say anything about money. I have thought about that check more than almost anything else in this story. $4,000 against what I had put in was not a payment. It was not even a gesture toward a payment. But she wrote it, and she wrote "For your house" on it, in her own hand, with a date on it. I never cashed it. I told myself it was because $4,000 would help them more than it would help me, which was true. That was not the reason. A check you deposit becomes $4,000. A check you keep stays a thing your mother wrote down. I folded it back into the card and put it in the notebook I keep in the glove box behind the fuel receipts. The last time I ate a meal in that house was Thanksgiving. We had 5 people and a table that seats 6, and when we sat down, my mother put her hand on the back of the chair at the head of the table, the one my father usually takes. And she said, "Go ahead and sit here for now, honey, for now." I sat there. I passed the potatoes. I asked Kelsey about work, and she said the market was slow and changed the subject. And Grant told a story about a client that took 9 minutes. And my father ate, and said almost nothing. And it was fine. It was completely fine. 3 weeks later, my mother called me at 7:12 in the morning to tell me the house was full. On the 22nd of December, I drove out there anyway. I want to be clear about what I intended, because I have gone back over it enough times to be sure. I was not going to knock. I was not going to make a scene or stand on the porch and say something I had rehearsed. I had 3 presents in a grocery bag, and I was going to set them inside the storm door where they would stay dry, and get back in the truck, and go. The truck being Nadine's pickup. I had borrowed it for the night. My tractor was sitting at a yard off Route 23, and there was no version of that street where I could have brought it in. 4:40 in the afternoon, and that time of year in central Ohio it is already going dark. Flat gray sky with a little orange bleeding out of the bottom of it. Old snow on the north side of everything. I came in from the state route and I did not pull into the driveway. I stopped 2 houses down, along the curb, and put it in park and left the engine running for the heat. The living room window was lit up. She had the string lights on the inside of the glass the way she has done since I was a kid, the fat-colored bulbs, not the little white ones. There were 4 vehicles in the driveway. My father's Silverado, my mother's Corolla, Grant's Acura, parked nose out, the way he parks, and a 4th one I did not know. A gray pickup, newer than my father's, backed in against the garage. The recycling bin was out at the curb for the Tuesday pickup, and it was overflowing. Not with wrapping paper, with flattened delivery boxes, a lot of them, stacked and jammed in and sticking up past the lid. 2 things were sitting out in that driveway that I looked directly at and did not understand. The first was a sign staked into the ground at the mouth of the driveway, the solar kind with a light on top that comes on at dusk. It had the house number on it and a line of smaller print underneath that I could not read from where I was. I figured it was decorative. My mother likes that kind of thing. The second was on the mailbox. There was a small black lockbox hanging off the handle of the mailbox, a combination box, the kind with 4 dials on the front. It had not been there in November. I looked right at it. I remember the shape of it against the white post. And what I thought, in about a second and a half, was that my father has been locking himself out since I was 14, and they had probably put a spare key in there for the next time. And then I stopped thinking about it entirely. You could see straight into that living room at that hour. Lights on inside and dark outside. A person walked past the window. Then a person walked past going the other way. Then 2 people at once. I counted 5. 5 people moving around in there at 4 in the afternoon on the 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. Kelsey's parents were not driving up from Mount Vernon until Christmas Eve. I knew that because my mother had told me the day and I had written it down in my head the way you do. So it was 5 people. And none of them were the reason I was not welcome. I sat there for 19 minutes. I know it was 19, because I looked at the clock on Nadine's dash when I stopped, and I looked at it again when I finally put the truck in gear, and I have thought a lot about the fact that the first thing I did was check the time. Like I was on a delivery, like there was a window I was going to miss. I did not do anything in those 19 minutes. That is the part I want to say plainly. Because when people tell these stories, they skip it and go right to where somebody makes a plan. I did not make a plan. I did not get angry in a way I could have named. I did not take out my phone. I sat in a borrowed pickup 2 houses down from a house I paid for in 1-wire transfer. And I watched shapes move behind a curtain. And at some point I noticed my jaw hurt because I had been holding it closed. There was one thought, and I could not get out from under it. I was casing my own house. That is the phrase that showed up. Not stealing, not spying, casing. Sitting outside a building trying to work out who was inside, and how many and where they were standing, which is a thing you do to a place that belongs to somebody else. And I was doing it in the dark, in a truck that was not mine, 2 houses away, so that nobody would see me. At some point a car came up the street behind me, and I felt my hand go to the shifter. And I understood that I was ready to leave before I was seen. And that was when I finally moved. I did not put the presents on my parents' porch. I drove up past the house, around the cul-de-sac, and came back and pulled into the driveway across the road. Ruth Ann Coyle's driveway. 71. Widow. Lives alone. Leaves her porch light on all night. I walked up her steps and set the 3 presents on the mat, on the far side of the door where they would stay dry, and turned around to leave. I did not want anybody to see me standing at that other door. That is the only reason. There was no plan in it. Her porch light came on. The door opened before I got to the bottom step. "Jenna Rossiter," she said. "Get in here. It's 6 below. It was not 6 below. It was about 25. But that is how she talks. I had known Ruth Ann Coyle exactly as much as you know the woman across the street from your parents." She waved. She brought over a coffee cake once. I had put a doorbell camera up on her porch the summer before, after she went down on the top step in April, and lay there for 11 minutes before the mail carrier found her. And I paid the $8 a month for it because she said she did not want a bill for something she did not ask for. That was the whole relationship. She had the presents in her hands before I could say anything about them. "These aren't for me." "No, ma'am. I know they're not." She set them on the bench inside the door. "Come sit down." Her kitchen had small flowered wallpaper and a calendar on the wall with writing in almost every square, and it smelled like onions in butter. She put a bowl of chicken noodle soup in front of me, the kind with egg noodles thick as your thumb. And then she went and did something at the sink with her back to me and did not watch me eat it. That is the part I would like to be able to do for somebody someday. She did not sit down on across from me and put her chin in her hand. She got busy. After a while, she dried her hands and sat. "How long have you been parked out there?" 20 minutes. 23, she said. Eat? I ate. Then she said in the flattest voice you can imagine, like she was reading a delivery manifest. Your brother and his wife moved in the second week of October. I did not say anything. I did not have anything. Rental truck. 2 trips. The first one was a Saturday, the 5th, I think, and the second one was the following Wednesday. And they had a fella helping them who I had not seen before. She looked at me. You didn't know. No. I thought you knew. I said to myself, well, that's their business. She got up and got the coffee pot and poured me a cup I had not asked for, and she kept talking with her back to me again, which I understood by then was on purpose. There's been people in and out over there since spring. People. Strangers. She sat back down. Weekends, mostly. Fridays, Sundays. They come in the afternoon and they leave in the morning. They pull suitcases. Suitcases. The rolling kind. She held up 2 fingers about a foot apart, showing me the size as if that was the detail that mattered. And looking back on it, it was, one time a couple came in a rental car with a dog, and they stood at the end of the driveway for 10 minutes because they could not get the code to work. The code. On the little black box. Then she got up again and went into the other room and came back with a notebook. Spiral. The kind you buy at a drugstore. The cover soft and curled from being carried. She opened it on the table in front of me and turned a few pages, and I saw columns, dates down the left, times, license plates, and every so often a note in the margin in her handwriting. 3 or 4 words? No more. I saw one that said 2 people, 1 dog. I saw one that said asked me for the code. She let me look for about 8 seconds. Then she closed it and put her hand flat on the cover. I'm not going to give this to you tonight, she said. Okay. Not because I don't want to, because you're upset. And I have watched a lot of people do something with a piece of paper while they were upset. She tapped the cover twice. It'll be here. I asked her why she kept it. She said she had worked 30 years as a deputy clerk in the Common Pleas Court over in Delaware. 30 years of watching people come in and swear up and down about what happened on a Tuesday in March. And 30 years of watching one line written down on the actual Tuesday in March end the argument in 4 seconds. Memory's no good, she said. Nobody's is, mine included. But paper doesn't get tired, I said. I thought you all put a spare key in that box. For my dad. She looked at me for a second longer than she needed to. Then she said, maybe. I wrote it down when it went up. 4th of December. And she left it there. And I let her. Because at that moment it did not seem like the important thing in the room. She asked me one question the whole night. What are you going to do? And I told her the truth, which was, I don't know. I have been asked a lot of questions in my life that I answered with something better than the truth. That one I did not. She walked me to the door. She flipped the porch light on with the side of her hand without looking at the switch. The way you do in a house you have lived in for 40 years. I got in Nadine's pickup and backed out, and I looked in the mirror at the end of the street. The light was still on. She left it on the whole time. All the way down Ash Grove, past the 4 cars, past the lit-up window with the fat colored bulbs, past the sign at the end of the driveway I still had not read, and out to the state route. I could see it in the mirror the entire way. I called dispatch on the 23rd and asked what was moving on Christmas Eve. I want to be honest about that, too. It was not sacrifice. Nobody made me. There was a load of poured concrete panels going out of Newark toward Kansas City, and I asked for it. And the guy on the phone said, "You sure?" And I said yes. And he said, "Merry Christmas, then." And that was the whole conversation. Interstate 70 westbound on the 24th of December, is one of the emptier things I have seen. From about 6 in the evening on, the four-wheelers thin out, and then they are gone. And what is left is trucks and the occasional travel trailer running late for somebody's house. Somebody had wrapped a string of lights around the pole light at a closed-scale house outside Springfield. Just one string, blinking, nobody there. I have thought about who did that, whether it was a guy on the crew who brought it from home, or whether it had been up there since some other year and nobody ever took it down. Every station on the radio was playing the same 40 songs, so I turned it off and ran in the engine noise, which is what I usually do anyway. I stopped at a travel plaza outside Richmond, Indiana, a little after 11. Ate at the counter. Chicken sandwich, coffee, the sandwich in a paper sleeve. There were 3 other drivers up there and a woman working the register who had a paper Santa hat pinned to her visor. Nobody talked about family. That is not a rule anybody made. It is just what happens. On Christmas Eve at 11 at night in a truck stop in Indiana, everyone at that counter has a reason for being there, and nobody is going to make you say yours out loud. One guy asked me what I was pulling. I told him. He asked how the permit situation was in Kansas this year. I told him. That was the whole extent of it, and it was, I want to say, one of the most decent hours of that entire winter. At 11:40, my aunt called. Aunt Bernie is my mother's younger sister. 66. Works part-time at a craft store in Delaware. She talks the way a faucet runs. She had no idea what she was walking into. And I want to say that clearly, because what she did to me that night she did completely by accident. Jenna, are you driving? Don't be driving. I'm parked. Oh, it was so nice tonight. Your mother did the ham with the pineapple, and Kelsey brought that wine, the one from the place in Granville. A pause where she chewed something. Everybody asked about you. Did they? Everybody, I said, well, she works, you know. I looked at my coffee. And then she said, oh, and Grant put the pictures in the group. Did you see them? He put like 9 of them in there, and one of them your father's eyes are closed. The group? I said, which group? Aunt Bernie. The family one. On the phone. I had the phone in my left hand. She kept talking about the ham, and I pulled it away from my ear and opened my messages while she was still going. And I scrolled, and the thread was there where it had always been. And I opened it. At the bottom of the thread, above where I could type, was one gray line of system text. You were removed from this conversation. I scrolled up to find it. November 3rd. I want you to understand what that date meant. My mother called me on the 18th of December to tell me the house was full. She was upset, apparently, about the guest room, and about Kelsey's parents driving up from Mount Vernon, and about how tense it would be. I had been taken out of the family group chat 6 weeks before that call. Not that night. Not in a fight. Nobody said anything to me. Somebody sat down at some point in the first week of November, opened a thread, held their thumb on my name, and removed me. And then everybody in that thread kept using it for 6 weeks. They planned the ham in there. They planned the day the in-laws were coming. They put 9 pictures in there. And every one of them knew. Not one person. In 6 weeks. Typed the words, hey, where's Jenna? That is when it changed for me. And I want to be precise about how. Up to that point, I had a story I was telling myself. And the story was that my mother had gotten flustered and let Kelsey talk her into something and had said a thing she would feel bad about later. That story required the whole thing to have been a moment. Something that happened on a Tuesday and could be taken back on a Wednesday. It was not a moment. It was a decision, made in advance, and then maintained by 9 people for 6 weeks. Aunt Bernie was still going. She had moved on to somebody's knee surgery. I said, "Bernie, I have to get some sleep." "Oh, honey, of course. Merry Christmas. Drive safe." Merry Christmas. I paid for the coffee. I left $3 on the counter under the saucer for the woman with the paper hat. I walked out across the lot and the air was cold enough that my back teeth ached. And I climbed up into the cab and pulled the curtain and got in the bunk. I set the alarm for 4. The post went up on the 27th. Sunbury has a town group on Facebook, 4,100 members, in a town of about 6,000. Lost dogs, road closures, somebody selling a snowblower, an argument about the new roundabout that has been running for 2 years. My mother did not post it. That is important. And it is the kind of thing she is very good at. Aunt Bernie posted it. One photo, the Christmas table, taken from the doorway of the dining room, everybody looking up. And underneath it, 3 lines. Blessed to have my sister's whole family under one roof this year. Some kids move away and forget the road back. Money is a nice thing to send. It don't sit in a chair. My mother left a heart on it 11 minutes later. I read it in the cab, parked at a truck stop in Effingham, Illinois, on my way back east with an empty trailer. The table in that photograph is a table I bought. I ordered it in January of the year before from a place in Zanesville. Solid oak, seat 6, and I paid $340 extra to have it delivered because I was in Texas that week and could not carry it in myself. At the head of that table, in the chair my father sits in, was Grant, and down at the bottom right corner of the frame, next to the leg of the china cabinet, half cut off, there was a suitcase, a gray rolling suitcase, upright, handle down, still zipped. I looked at it for about a second. Somebody had come in and set their bag down inside the door. Kelsey's mother, probably. I scrolled past it. 31 comments. I read all of them. Then a couple hours later, I read all of them again. My 8th grade language arts teacher, Mrs. Kohler, who I had not spoken to in 19 years, wrote "Beautiful Family Bernie." The man who runs the meat counter at the farmer's market wrote "Amen" to that. A woman I graduated with wrote "This hits home." My sister is the same way. Somebody I do not know wrote "Kids these days think a check is a relationship." And under that one, 4 people had reacted with the little heart. I want to try to explain what that does, because if you have not lived in a town of 6,000 people, I do not think it comes across right. In a city, a thing like that is noise. Strangers say something about a stranger and it evaporates. In a town like Sunbury, it is not noise. It is a decision. 4,000 people is not an audience. It is a census. Those are the people at the counter when you buy gas. Those are the people whose kids I went to school with. When Mrs. Kohler types "beautiful family" under a photograph that I paid for and was not invited to, she is not making a comment. She is picking a side, and she does not know she is doing it. And that is worse, not better. I drove home through Sunbury 4 days later because I needed a gallon of washer fluid and the truck stop on the route was out. I stopped at the grocery on Columbus Street, and a woman I could not place, maybe 60, looked at me by the end cap with the discounted Christmas candy and kept looking a beat too long, and then went the other way around. That is all that happened. She might have been trying to remember my name. She might have had a headache. But I stood there in an aisle with a jug of washer fluid in my hand, and I understood something for the first time. Reputation is not an abstract thing. It is not about your feelings. It is a physical fact about where people stand when they are near you. I did not respond to the post. I did not comment. I did not message Bernie. I did open the photo one more time before I put the phone down. and I zoomed in on the table, on the grain of the top, because I wanted to see if there was a water ring on it, and there was, near the middle, a pale circle somebody had not wiped up. That night I was going through the mail Nadine had been holding for me. She keeps a box at a shipping store in Springfield, and anything that was not going to Ashgrove came there. 2 months of it in a rubber band, junk, a card from an insurance agent, a summons for jury duty in a county I do not live in, and 1 letter from the homeowner's insurance company, reference to a routine review of the policy, reference to information received regarding business activity at the insured address, request for a written response from the policyholder within 30 days, a line down at the bottom about coverage possibly being void from the date any undisclosed activity began. I read it standing up next to the truck, in maybe 15 seconds. There is a certain kind of letter that companies send out by the tens of thousands, generated by a machine that flagged something in a database and does not know what it flagged. I have gotten them about my truck. Everybody has gotten them. That is what I decided it was. I folded it and put it in the glove box with the other paper. It went in next to a card with a cardinal on the front, with a $4,000 check inside it that I had never taken to the bank. The 2 of them sat there together, touching, for the next 3 weeks. I shut the glove box. Warren Boyce's office is on the 2nd floor above a laundromat on Winter Street in Delaware, Ohio. There is no elevator. The stairwell smells like dryer sheets the whole way up, which I decided on the 2nd of January was either a good sign or a bad one, and I still do not know which. 2 rooms. Him and a woman named Charlene, who has worked for him since 2003, a printer on a metal cart. He is 58. His shirt was a size too big in the shoulders. He did not have a tie on, and I do not think he owns one. The first thing he said, after we sat down, was not what I expected. He did not ask what happened. He did not ask what they did. He said, "What do you want the end of this to look like?" I sat there. I had driven 40 minutes to that office with a whole speech in my head about Christmas, and about a group chat, and about a woman named Bernie. And he had asked me a question about a year from now, and I did not have an answer for it. "I don't know yet," I said. "That's fine, but we're going to keep coming back to it." He took the cap off a pen. "Tell me about the property." So I told him. The closing, the wire, the title, 2 years of taxes and insurance and $600 a month, what Ruth Ann Coyle told me in her kitchen. Halfway through, the printer jammed. He got up in the middle of my sentence, opened the back of it, pulled a folded sheet out, closed it, sat back down, and said, "Go on." When I finished, he laid it out for me, and I am going to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because everything for the next 8 months ran on this. You own it," he said. "There is no argument there. Your name is on the deed. You paid cash. There is no lien and no cosigner. They live there with no lease and no rent. In Ohio, that is a tenancy at will, month to month. To end it, you give a 30-day notice. You do not need a reason. Nobody has to have done anything wrong. If they are still there after 30 days, you serve a 3-day notice to leave the premises. If they are still there after that, you file. The case is called forcible entry and detainer. It is heard in municipal court. It is not a trial, it is short. Service has to be done right. Certified mail, return receipt requested, or hand-delivered, or left at the residence. Then he stopped and put the pen down. "Your brother and his wife," he said. "Are they on any agreement? Anything in writing? No. Then they aren't tenants. They're occupants. They get their own notice, separately, each of them in their own name. He wrote 3 names on a legal pad. My mother and father on one line, Grant on the second, Kelsey on the third. Then he told me the part I had not asked about before I could ask about it. "This goes in the public record," he said. "The filing, the names, the address. Anybody who wants to look it up can look it up in about 90 seconds from their couch. In a town that size, that has a price, I am not telling you not to do it. I am telling you what it costs. And then, you can win this and still lose more than you get. I have turned that sentence over probably 400 times since." He gave me the money numbers without me asking. 1,500 retainer, 165 to file, $45 per successful service if we needed a process server. I asked him what happens if I do nothing. He said the taxes are still mine. The insurance is still mine. The liability is still mine. If somebody falls down the basement stairs in that house tonight, the person who gets sued is the person on the deed. And that is me. And that does not change no matter who is sleeping in there or how long they have been sleeping in there. "Doing nothing is also a decision," he said. "It's just one where you keep paying." Then he asked me something small, and I answered it in about 4 words. And it was the most expensive 4 words of my life. He said, "Where does your important mail go?" "There, the house." "All of it. License, registration, the company, insurance. It's the only address I've got." He looked at me over the top of his glasses. "You should change that." "I will." "When, after this is over?" "It's a whole federal filing to move a company address. It's not a form you do in 5 minutes. And I'm running." I shrugged. "It'll keep." He wrote 1 line on the pad. I saw him do it. I did not ask what it said. Then I signed the 3 notices. He asked if I was sure. He asked it once, flatly. The way you ask a man whether the chains are tight before he pulls out. I said yes. Here is what I understood sitting in that chair, and it took me a while afterward to be able to say it. I was not getting revenge. Revenge is when you take something that was theirs. I was taking back a thing that had never once left my name. Not for a day. Not for an hour. On paper. In the county records. That house had been mine the entire time, without interruption. And that was the part that actually hurt. Because if it had been mine the entire time, then why had I spent 2 years asking permission to sit down in it? He capped the pen and looked at the calendar hanging by the window. "When do you want these to go out?" I looked at it too. On the 4th of January, I was sitting in a line of trucks at a steel yard in Gary, Indiana, waiting my turn at the loading bay. That is the whole picture. Gray sky, gray lake wind, 6 trucks ahead of me, a gantry crane running back and forth over the racks. I had my phone in the holder on the dash with the tracking page open, and I had been refreshing it maybe every 10 minutes since 8 in the morning like a person waiting on test results. 450 miles away. At 1140 Ash Grove Lane in Sunbury, Ohio. A mail carrier was walking up the driveway with 3 envelopes. 3 certified letters. Return receipt requested on all 3. The first one was addressed to Dale Rossiter and Sharon Rossiter. 30-day notice to terminate a tenancy at will. The second one was addressed to Grant Rossiter. Notice to vacate. Unauthorized occupant. The third one was addressed to Kelsey Rossiter. The same. He rang the bell. He would have had the 3 green cards in his hand, the little postcards with the perforated edge, 1 clipped to each envelope, and he would have had a pen, 3 names, 3 signature lines. My mother came to the door, and she signed all 3. The mail carrier did not ask her whether she was Grant Rossiter. He did not ask whether she was Kelsey Rossiter. He is not required to. He is required to get a signature from a person of suitable age at the address. And he got one, 3 times. And he tore off the 3 cards and put them in his bag and went back down the driveway. I want to sit on that for a second, because at the time I did not think about it at all. At the time I thought it is done. I got the video at 2:06 in the afternoon. Ruth Ann sent it with no message, no text above it, no text below it. Just a file. 31 seconds. From a doorbell camera across the street. Wide angle, slightly fish-eyed at the edges the way those are. You can see the whole front of the house. You can see the mailbox on its post at the end of the driveway with the little black lockbox hanging off the handle. The mail carrier comes up the walk. The storm door opens. My mother is in a red cardigan and an apron. She has a dish towel over her shoulder. She takes the pen. She signs. He turns the second card and she signs. He turns the third card and she signs. She looks at the 3 envelopes in her hand. She turns them over, front to back, which takes about 2 seconds. Then she says something to him. I watched that clip 4 times before I could hear it. The first 3 times I was watching her hands. On the 4th time I turned the volume all the way up and put the phone against my ear and I got it. She says, "Thank you, Kenny. Stay warm. Thank you, Kenny. Stay warm." She had just signed for 3 certified letters, 2 of them addressed to people who were not her. And the thing she did next was, be pleasant to the mail carrier by name. She goes back inside. The door closes. The clip ends. I sat there in the cab in a line of trucks at a steel yard in Gary, Indiana, and I watched a 31-second video 4 times, and out through the windshield the crane went back and forth over the racks. My phone started at 2:41. Grant, Grant, Grant. My mother, Grant. Unknown number. My mother. Grant. I left it in the holder face up and I watched it light up and go dark and light up again. And then the yard guy in the orange vest waved me forward, and I put it in gear and pulled up to the bay and got out to open the trailer. You cannot load a step deck and answer a phone at the same time. That is not an excuse. It is just a fact about the job. You are up on the deck. You are pulling straps out of the winches. There is a man on a forklift who needs you to tell him where the center of gravity is. It takes as long as it takes. It took an hour and 10 minutes. Somewhere in there I stopped thinking about the phone entirely, which surprised me later. I was running chains over a bundle of channel iron and checking the corners and doing the arithmetic on the axle weights in my head. And for a solid hour I was just a person doing a job she is good at. Then I climbed down and pulled the tarp corner square and stood there in the cold with my gloves off, blowing on my hands. And I got back in the cab and picked up the phone, 41 missed calls, and 1 text message. Not from my mother, not from Grant, from Kelsey. 2 sentences. I read it twice, because the first time through I was still braced for something else. Crying, yelling. What did you do? How could you? That is not what it said. It said we should talk before this goes any further. There's a version of this where everyone still gets what they want, and there's a version where you spend a lot of money to end up somewhere worse. I read it a 3rd time. There was no anger in it anywhere. There was no surprise in it either. It was not the message of a woman who had just been blindsided in her own kitchen. It was an offer. I read that message about 9 times over the next 2 days. There's a version of this where everyone still gets what they want. I kept snagging on the word everyone, because for that sentence to work, everyone has to already know what everyone wants. She had a map of this thing in her head. She had had it for a while. And here is the part I got wrong, and I got it wrong for another 11 days. I thought I was in a fight with my mother. I thought this was a woman who had let herself get talked into something at Christmas and would come around by spring, and that everybody else in that house was just furniture standing near it. What changed my mind was not an argument. Nobody sat me down. Nobody confessed anything. It was a number on a phone screen, read at a red light in Zanesville with my foot on the brake, and a load of transformer housings behind me. And the number made no sense at all until it made all the sense in the world. 71. Grant was waiting for me on the 5th, at 7:20 in the morning, at the truck stop on Route 23 north of Columbus. He was standing next to my tractor with no gloves on. His ears were red. When I came out of the building with a coffee, he had his hands jammed under his arms, and he was doing that little shifting thing people do when they have been standing outside a lot longer than they planned. He had been there since before 6. He told me later he did not know what time I got up, or where I slept, or whether I even parked there. He had asked another driver 2 rows over which truck was mine. He had to ask, because he had never seen it. That is my brother, 36 years old, and he had to ask a stranger to point out his sister's truck. He opened with a joke. "You know they've got a whole hotel across the street, right? I know. I'm just saying." He laughed. Nobody else did. You could probably afford it. Then he moved to explaining, which is where he lives. He said Mom was a wreck. He said she had not slept. He said she had had to take one of her pills. He said Dad was not talking to anybody, which, I pointed out, is not new information about our father. He said the letters had come out of nowhere. I said they came out of the 18th of December. He said that was a misunderstanding. I asked which part, and that is when he got to the real thing. And I want to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because I have thought about it a lot, and I do not think he was lying, and I do not think it was nothing. "You've been gone 11 years, he said. "I'm not gone. I work. Jenna," he put his hand up, "just let me. You've been gone 11 years. And in 11 years I drove Dad to physical therapy 38 times. He held up a finger. 38, I counted. I have them on a calendar. Not because I'm keeping score, because I had to move clients around every single time and I had to write it down. I did not say anything. "You sent money," he said. "I sent time. You want to tell me which one's worth more? Go ahead, tell me." And I could not. I want to be honest with you about that moment, because it would be easy for me to stand here now, knowing everything I know, and say that it was manipulation, and it was not. Not that part. That part was true. I was not there when the transmission went out on my mother's car, and somebody had to sit in a waiting room for 4 hours. I was not there for the second back procedure. I was not there the day the furnace quit in February, and my father, who cannot lift a compressor anymore, was down on the basement floor with a flashlight in his teeth trying to do it himself. And it was Grant who came over, and it was Grant who called somebody. I paid for the new furnace. I was in Amarillo. So when he asked me which one is worth more, I did not have a number. Nobody has a number. That is the whole problem with that question, and it is why people ask it. I stood there with a paper cup going cold in my hand and I said, "That's fair." And it should have ended there. If it had ended there, I do not know what I would have done with the rest of that winter. But he could not leave it alone. He shifted his weight and looked past me at the truck and said, "So look, can you get those letters pulled back?" "Before the 15th, I said. "Why the 15th? There's just stuff going on this month." What stuff he did not answer. He looked at his watch. It was a nice watch. He looked at his watch and he did the thing men do where they look at a watch to end a subject instead of to check a time. And then he said something about a client at 8:30. I want you to notice the shape of that. because I did not notice it until later. He had a genuine grievance. 11 years, 38 trips, a furnace on a Tuesday in February, all of it real. He walked in with that, and he laid it down, and it landed. And then, 40 seconds after landing the truest thing he had said to me in a decade, he tried to use it to get a court deadline moved. That is what took the weight out of it. Not that he was wrong. That he was wrong about what he wanted the wrongness to buy. He turned to go. Then he stopped, because the passenger door of my truck was standing open. And he looked in. You can see the whole cab from the ground on that side. The bunk with the sleeping bag on it, not made. A toothbrush standing in a coffee mug in the cup holder. A milk crate on the floor with 3 shirts folded in it. The little travel bottle of dish soap. He stood there and looked at it for about 4 seconds, and something went across his face that I could not read and still cannot. It was not pity. Pity I would have recognized. I think it was the first time in 11 years my brother had any idea where I sleep. He said, "All right. Well." And he got in the Acura and pulled out onto the frontage road. I stayed out there in the cold for a minute after he left, and I thought about that gray suitcase in the corner of the photograph. Kelsey found me on the 9th. That is the correct word. She did not call and ask where I was. She called my dispatcher, said she was family, said it was about my mother, and asked where the truck was going to be that evening. He told her. He had no reason not to. He apologized about it later, and I told him to forget it, and I meant it. But I wanted on the record that the first thing she did was locate me. 6 in the evening, the truck stop off the exit at Sunbury. We sat at the counter under the fluorescents, next to the drink cooler, because there is no other place in a building like that to have a conversation. She did not take her coat off. Camel wool, good one, belted. She sat down on a stool in that coat with her back straight like the stool was a chair at a closing table. The first thing she said was, "This is actually a great location. The interchange work is going to double the traffic here in 2 years. That is not small talk. That is a person telling you what she is, in one sentence, before you have said hello." Then she got to it. "I want to say something, and I want you to let me finish." I let her finish. "That house is titled to a woman who has never slept in it." She turned a spoon over on the counter. "Not one night. One night. The night we closed. Air mattress. One night in 2 years." She let that sit. "Morally, that is your parents' home. Jenna, morally. They live in it. They mow it. They clean the gutters. They know which window sticks. You wired money one time and you drove away. I've paid the taxes on it every month for 2 years. I know. And that is generous, and nobody is saying it isn't." She turned the spoon back over. "But paying for something and owning something are 2 different relationships to it. Morally, that house is theirs. I am not taking anything from you. I am trying to fix what the paperwork says wrong. 3 times. She used the phrase morally that afternoon 3 separate times. And I counted. And I have wondered ever since whether she knew she was doing it. Then she played the card she had been saving. "You stood at that closing table," she said, "and you said, in 7 years, once his credit's clean, we'll transfer it into your names. You said that in front of all of us. Your mother heard you say it." "That's right. I did say that." So it's been 2. So it was never going to happen." She said it flatly, like a fact she was helping me see. That is how those promises go. 7 becomes 10, 10 becomes never, And one day you get married or you get sick or you get in a wreck out there on the interstate. And that house goes to whoever your paperwork says it goes to. And your parents are 63 and 61 years old standing in a driveway that belongs to a stranger. I want to be honest. That is a real risk. It is a real thing that happens to people. If she had walked in with that and nothing else, I would have listened. Then she made her offer. And the offer is what told me everything. Sign it over to them. Quit claim. It's 1 page. I can have it drawn up in a day. She said it as easily as ordering. And everything from Christmas goes away. Nobody talks about it again. And you come out for Easter. Easter. She put it on the table like a coupon. Like she was authorized to issue holidays. I sat there with that for a second, and then I asked her the only question I actually wanted answered. Who's sleeping in the south bedroom? And she stopped. It was not long, half a second. If you were not watching for it, you would not have caught it. And the only reason I caught it is that she had not paused once in 11 minutes. Half a second. And then, your parents moved down to the basement so they'd have the walk out. Dad's back, which was an answer to a different question. That half second is what I drove away with. Not the moral argument, not the 7 years. Half a second at a truck stop counter under a fluorescent light. She stood up. And when she was standing and looking down at me, the address changed. Up to that point, every sentence had been about you and your mother and your parents. Now it was just my name. Jenna. You're an owner-operator. Your whole business is your record. She pulled her gloves out of her pocket. You know better than anybody how fast that can go sideways on a person. 1 complaint. That's it. She was not threatening me. If you played it back for a judge, it is a woman making a general observation about the trucking industry to a woman who works in it. I know what it was. She left the ticket for both coffees on the counter. I paid it, $2.80. And I want to tell you that I noticed I was paying it, standing there in that building, 3 weeks after being told there was no room for me, and that I noticed it and paid it anyway. On the 13th, I was parked at a lot in Hagerstown, Maryland, waiting on a Monday appointment, and I opened the glove box to get my notebook. The insurance letter came out first. It always did. It sat on top because it was the newest thing in there. This time I read it. Not the way you read a thing you have already decided is junk. All the way through, twice, with a finger under the lines. Reference is made to a routine review of the above-referenced policy. The company has received information indicating business activity at the insured address. Please provide a written response describing the nature of any such activity within 30 days of the date of this letter. Failure to disclose a change in the use or occupancy of an insured premises may result in coverage being voided as of the date such use began. Then I looked at the date at the top, December 9th. I sat there in the driver's seat with the letter in my hand, and I did that arithmetic 3 separate times to make sure I had it right. My mother called me on the 18th to say the house was full. That letter was dated the 9th. I called the number at the bottom, hold music, 4 minutes. A woman named Denise picked up, read my policy number back to me, read the address back to me, asked me to confirm the last 4 of my social. I asked what the letter was about. She said the company subscribes to a service that scans public listings and cross-references them against insured addresses, and that the address had come back with a match. I asked what kind of match. She said she could see that the flag was for a short-term rental listing, but that she could not see the listing itself from her screen, and that this was a fairly common flag, and that a lot of it turns out to be nothing. Somebody puts a spare room up for 1 weekend during a football game. Somebody's grown son lists a basement without telling them. It gets sorted out with 1 letter most of the time. I asked her how many days the flag had been on the account. She said she could not see that either. She said the letter goes out automatically when the flag comes in. So the letter date is usually the flag date, give or take a day. December 9th, then give or take a day. Then she said the part that I still hear in my head, and she said it in the completely normal voice of a person reading a policy provision on a Monday afternoon. She said that if there is a fire, or a slip and fall, or any liability event at a property while it is being rented out to paying guests, and that use was never disclosed, the carrier may deny the claim entirely. I said, Deny it to who? She said, To the named insured on the policy, ma'am. And I said, That's me. And she said, Yes, ma'am. That's you. I want to try to explain what happened in my chest right then. Because up to that afternoon, this had been a story about who gets to eat dinner in a house. There is a thing that happens on a long grade. You come over the top of a mountain with 80,000 pounds behind you, and you set your engine brake and pick your gear and start down. And if you have picked wrong, you do not find out right away. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no bang. What happens is you glance at the gauge, and the brake temperature has come up a little, and it is still in the green, and it is still fine. But it is going the wrong direction. And you know exactly what is at the bottom of that hill. That is what that phone call was. Nothing had happened yet. The gauge was still green, but I understood, sitting in a lot in Hagerstown, Maryland, that I had the whole load and none of the money. If a paying stranger fell down the basement stairs in that house at 2 a.m, it was not my mother's problem. It was not Grant's problem. It was not Kelsey's problem, and Kelsey is the one who would know that better than anybody at that table. The person who gets sued is the person on the deed. And if the carrier denies the claim because of an activity I never disclosed, then there is no policy standing between that lawsuit and everything I own, which is a truck, a trailer, a business, and a house. Everything I had earned in 11 years of sleeping in a parking lot was standing behind an undisclosed activity that I did not know was happening at an address I do not live at. There is one more thing about that call that I did not understand until much later, and I'm going to put it here because it belongs here. At the very end, Denise asked me to confirm the mailing address on the policy for the file. I gave her the house. She read it back to me. 1140 Ash Grove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio. And I said, yes, that is correct. And she said, thank you, and I did not think one single thought about it. I thanked Denise. I told her I would send a written response. She said, take your time. You have until the 9th of January. It was the 13th. I did not correct her. I hung up. Then I sat there for a while. It was maybe 40 degrees and gray, and there was a guy 2 spots over running a generator. I got the tablet out from under the passenger seat, the one I use for permits and load boards, and I opened a browser, and I typed in the address of my parents' house, 1140. Ash Grove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio, and I hit enter. The first thing that came back was a listing. Quiet private room, ranch home, close to 36 and 37. I knew the photo before I finished reading the headline. Bed against the far wall, window on the right that faces the backyard, closet door on the left that sticks in humid weather, the south bedroom, the one room in that house I had ever slept in. One night, on an air mattress. The night we closed, and I woke up twice because it was too quiet. There was a print hanging over the bed in the photo, a little framed thing, a barn in winter, that I bought at a flea market on Route 42 outside Delaware for $11 because it reminded me of a place I used to fuel at in Michigan. I carried it in myself. They had staged the room around it. I scrolled, second listing, same address, primary bedroom, private bath. That is my parents' room, their bed, the dresser. My father refinished the summer after he stopped working because he had to have something to do with his hands, which meant my parents were not sleeping in their own bedroom, which meant if both rooms were listed, my parents were downstairs. Prices: $118 a night for the small room, $164 for theirs. Then I found the date the listing went live. March. Not last month. Not since the letters. March of the previous year. 9 months before my mother picked up the phone on the 18th of December and told me there was no room. And then the number: 71 reviews. I sat there and looked at that number for a while, and I am going to be honest, I could not do anything with it at first. It was like looking at a word until it stops being a word. 71. 71 separate times. A person who was not related to me had paid money to sleep in that house. I started reading them. They were fine. That is the thing. They were nice, ordinary, 4- and 5-star reviews written by people on vacation, clean, quiet, easy check-in, great location for the lake. The gentleman came out and helped me back my car out of the driveway. The gentleman. And then one from July, and this is the one that took the floor out from under me. The owners are the sweetest couple. They stayed down in the basement so you have the whole main floor. They left us fresh towels and my husband and I felt right at home. The owners. Some woman on a weekend trip to Alum Creek wrote a public review calling my 63-year-old father and my 61-year-old mother the owners of a house they do not own, because that is what she was told, and then she got in her car and drove back to wherever she came from. I stopped reading after that one. I got out of the truck. I did not have a coat on. I want to say that because it is the only way I know how to describe the state I was in. It was 30-something degrees in Maryland with a wind coming across an open lot, and I got out and walked the whole length of that parking row in a flannel shirt and walked back, and then did it again. And I did not notice the cold until I was already back in the seat. Then I opened the tablet again, and I went to the Ohio Secretary of State Business Search, which is a public website that anybody can use, and I put in the address instead of a name. 2 companies came back. One was mine. Rossiter Hauling, registered agent, me. Principal address: 1140 Ashgrove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio, because that is the only address I have. The second one I had never heard of. Registered in April of the previous year, some kind of holdings name, the type you make up in 4 seconds. And the agent was Kelsey. Same house, same street number, same mailbox. And that is when it all came apart into pieces and laid itself out flat. And every single piece was something I had already seen with my own eyes and walked away from. 3 cartons of ice cream in the freezer of a house where nobody eats ice cream. 4 bottles of expensive sparkling water. A recycling bin at the curb overflowing with flattened delivery boxes 3 days before Christmas. A small solar sign staked at the mouth of the driveway with a line of print under the house number that I could not read from 2 houses away, because it was not decorative. It was a sign that tells a guest where to go. A gray rolling suitcase, upright, still zipped, in the bottom corner of a Christmas photograph, next to the leg of the china cabinet. That was not Kelsey's mother's bag. Kelsey's parents did not arrive until Christmas Eve. That photograph was taken on the 25th, but the bag had been there in the corner of that room the whole time, in every version of that week, and I had looked directly at it and slid my thumb past it. Somebody was paying to sleep in my room on the night I was told there was no room. I sat in the cab for a long time after that with the tablet dark in my lap. Then I went inside the truck stop and printed all of it at the business counter. 25 cents a page? Standing there feeding the machine and watching it come out. 41 pages. I paid in quarters. On the 15th, I borrowed Nadine's pickup again and drove out to Sunbury. It was the first time I had been on that street since the 22nd of December. I did not pull into 1140. I pulled into Ruth Ann's. And she had the door open before I was out of the truck, the same as before. She had the notebook on the kitchen table already. She had set it there before I got there. "You've seen something," she said. "I've seen everything." She pushed it across to me. 4 months of it. September through the middle of January. 90-some lines in a spiral notebook, $1 and change at the drugstore. The columns were date, time, plate, Ohio plates mostly, and then a scatter of others. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, one from Ontario. And in the margin, next to maybe a third of them, 3 or 4 words in her hand. Never more than that. 2 people, 1 dog. Rolling bags. Asked me the code. Parked blocking my box. Left 6:40 in the morning. Came back at 9. Forgot something. Same silver car as the 14th. There was one that said, simply, "She cried in the driveway." Dated November 8th. I asked her about it, and she said a woman had sat in a rental car for 10 minutes before going in, and she had no idea why, and it was none of her business. And she wrote it down anyway. I asked her why she keeps it. I had asked her before, and she had given me the short version. This time she gave me the long one. 30 years as a deputy clerk in the Common Pleas Court over in Delaware. And what she said was this. In 30 years, she watched hundreds of people stand up and swear to what happened on a Tuesday in March, and she watched almost every one of them be honest and be wrong, because a person's memory of a Tuesday in March is built out of what happened after it. "They're not lying," she said. "They just can't get back there. Nobody can." Then she tapped the notebook. But a line written down on the actual Tuesday in March doesn't move. It doesn't get better or worse over the winter. It's just sitting there. She put both hands flat on the table. "You don't go to court because you're angry. Jenna, anger runs out. Everybody's does. Paper doesn't run out." I asked her, because it had been bothering me for 2 weeks, why she had never said anything before. And she told me about her daughter. Not her daughter by blood. Her stepdaughter, from her husband's first marriage, who called her mom for 22 years and stopped speaking to her 10 years ago over something Ruth Ann says she still does not fully understand and thinks maybe had to do with the will. She told it in about 90 seconds. She did not ask me to feel anything about it. She did not turn it into a lesson. She did not say, and that is why I write things down, either. Although I have wondered about it since. I asked if she had ever tried to reach out. She said she sends a card twice a year, birthday and Christmas. She said she does not know if they get opened. She said the address she has is 9 years old, and she is aware of that, and she sends them anyway. And then she said, "That's enough about me," in a way that closed the subject like a drawer. The only thing she said, at the end, was, "I know what it's like to stand out in a yard and look at a window with the lights on in it." Then she got up and put the coffee on, because that is what she does when a thing gets too close. Before I left, she asked me if I wanted the spare key back. She has had a key to 1140 since the summer I bought it. My father gave it to her himself, the second week, because he locks himself out roughly once a year and always has, and because he trusts her, and I think also because it was a way of saying we are staying. I told her to keep it. I did not think about that answer for 1 second. It was reflexive. Of course, keep it. Why would you not keep it? Then I went out to the truck and stood there with the door open, looking across the street. The living room curtains were down. There was the flicker of a television behind them, and the little black lockbox was still there on the mailbox handle, right where it had been on the 22nd of December. "How long has that thing been on there?" I said. She came out to the top of her steps and looked, and then she went back in and got the notebook and came out again and turned pages, and she read it off to me. 4th of December, 11:40 in the morning. She held it out so I could see the line, 3 words next to it, in her handwriting, new, black 1. 4th of December, I said. 4th of December, 2 weeks before that phone call. And here is what I did with that. I stood at the end of her driveway on the 15th of January, and I nodded and I said, "That's for the guests, so they can let themselves in." And I was right. On the 15th of January, that is exactly what it was for, Ruth Ann said. "Do you want me to go take it off there?" And I said, "No, leave it. In another few weeks they'll be out of there and it won't matter." Then I got in the truck and drove back to the yard. On the 20th, I put 41 pages on Warren Boyce's desk. He read for 4 minutes without saying one word. Charlene brought coffee in and set it down and left. The radiator under the window came on. When he got to the end, he squared the stack up on the desk, tapping the edges, and then he did something I did not expect. He got a fresh legal pad and drew 2 lines down it, making 3 columns. "You've got 3 problems," he said, "and I need you to stop putting them in the same sentence. Column 1, the eviction." "This does not change the eviction case at all," he said. "Not one thing. The court is not going to care what they did with the bedrooms. The court cares about 2 questions. Whose name is on the deed, and was service done right?" That's it. That's the whole hearing. I said that seemed like it should matter. He said it does matter. Morally. And then he said the sentence I have quoted to about 11 people since. Court is not where you go to be told you were right. Court is where you go to make a thing stop. Column 2, the insurance. That is yours. That is not theirs. You are going to write that carrier a letter this week and tell them, in plain language, that you have discovered a short-term rental operation at the address, that you did not authorize it, and that it is being terminated. He looked up. "And they may raise your premium, or they may non-renew you, and then you are shopping for a policy on a house with a rental history and a pending eviction on it. And I want you to know that is a real possibility." "So I get punished for telling them?" "You get exposed for not telling them. Those are the 2 options. Column 3. And he slowed down here. Rental income, he said, was generated at a property titled to you. He let that sit for a second. "I am not going to give you tax advice, and you are not going to take tax advice from a real estate lawyer. You are going to call an accountant this week, and you are going to tell her everything, and she is going to tell you what has to be filed and what does not. But I want you to hear the shape of it before you leave this room, because you should not find that shape out in 9 months from somebody in an envelope." Then he capped the pen and leaned back. "Here's what I want you to understand about your position," he said. "They took your house and made a business out of it. But if a guest falls, or there's a fire, or somebody's dog bites the mail carrier in that driveway, the person served with a lawsuit is you. You are carrying the entire risk of an operation you don't get $1 from." Nobody had said it out loud in that order before. I had felt the shape of it in a parking lot in Maryland. He put words on it. Then he said the thing about Kelsey. "She's licensed. Real estate, yes. So she has something to lose." He tapped the desk twice with 2 fingers. "Understand what that means. A person with a license is not more careful than everybody else. A person with a license is more dangerous when they get cornered because they know exactly how much it costs them to lose, and they will do a lot to not lose it. I wrote that down. I actually wrote it down in the notebook from my glove box in the office, and I still have that page. Then he flipped back a page in his pad to something he had written on the 2nd of January, and he looked at it, and he looked at me. "Your mail," he said. "What about it?" "You told me 3 weeks ago you'd change the address." "I know. Have you?" "Not yet." He waited. "It's not a form," I said. "For a motor carrier, it's a federal filing. You have to update the authority record. Then the insurance company has to refile their form to match the new address. And if those two don't line up, you can end up with a hole in your record. It takes weeks, and I've got loads booked into March." He kept looking at me. "I will do it," I said. "As soon as this is finished. Right now, if I start moving pieces around while there's an active case, I'm asking for something to fall through a crack. And here is the thing I need you to know. Everything I just said was true. It is a federal filing. It does take weeks. It does have to line up with the insurance filing. Any owner-operator listening to this right now knows exactly what I mean. And half of them have put it off for the same reason. It was a completely reasonable decision made by a competent person for correct reasons." Warren looked at me for another second. Then he wrote one more line on the pad, and he did not tell me what it said, and I did not ask. We set the hearing, January 28th, 9 in the morning. Courtroom 2, Delaware Municipal. I asked him what our odds were. He did not give me a number. He said, "I don't know. I know your file's clean." Then he pushed his glasses up. "Clean isn't the same as winning." At the door I asked whether my parents would have to be there. He said they would be served with a summons. So, yes. I stood there in the doorway holding my coat, and I asked if there was any way at all to do this where my mother did not have to sit in a courtroom. He said no. Courtroom 2 at Delaware Municipal is a room with wooden benches, a low ceiling, fluorescent panels, and a clock on the back wall that runs about 2 minutes slow. I turned down a load to be there. Steel out of Cleveland to Indianapolis, $1,800. I want that number in here because for a long time afterward, it was the only part of that morning I could think about without something happening in my throat. They came in at 5 till 9, all 4 of them. And here is where they sat. My parents took the second row on the left. My father let my mother go in first and then sat on the aisle. Grant and Kelsey took the front row. Kelsey had a folder, and in the 4th row, behind everybody, spread out a little the way people do when they are not part of a thing but want to see it, were Aunt Bernie and 2 other people, my mother's cousin Dot, and a man I am fairly sure was Dot's husband, who I have met maybe 4 times in my life. They came to watch. That is the part I did not prepare for. I had prepared for my mother. I had not prepared for an audience. My father was wearing a button-down shirt with a collar. He owns 2 of those. He wears them to funerals. He wore a polo shirt to Grant's wedding, and my mother was annoyed about it for a month. He put on a funeral shirt to come to court. I saw that from across the room, and I had to look down at the table and count something. And what I counted was the screw heads in the metal edge of it, which was 11 on my side. Kelsey did not have a lawyer. She was representing herself. Manila folder, legal pad, back straight. And she was, and I am being accurate here, completely calm. More calm than me. More calm than Warren, who was clicking a pen without pressing hard enough to actually click it. The magistrate called the case at 9:04. He read the number and the caption and the address, and then he did what they do at the top of one of these, which is confirm that everybody in front of him got proper notice. He asked the defendants, one at a time, whether they had received the notices. My father said yes. My mother said yes. Kelsey stood up, and she said one thing, not a speech, not an argument, one sentence, in a normal voice, the way you would tell somebody the store closes at 6. Your Honor, I've never signed for anything, Grant said. Me either. The magistrate asked Warren for the green cards. Warren had them. Of course he had them. He had them clipped to the inside cover of the file. 3 little postcards with the perforated edges. And he handed them up. The magistrate laid all 3 next to each other on the bench and looked down at them. It took him about 4 seconds. 3 cards, 3 different addressees, and on the signature line of all 3, the same handwriting, the same hard right slant, the same S that starts too high. He did not raise his voice. That is what I remember most. He was not annoyed, and he was not sympathetic. And he did not look at my mother, and he did not look at me. He looked at Warren and said it like a man reading a weather report. Service on Grant Rossiter and Kelsey Rossiter was not proper. A certified letter signed for by a co-resident does not put an individual occupant on notice when the occupant is not the addressee. As to those 2 defendants, dismissed without prejudice, which means I could file it again from 0, starting with new notices, Warren said. Understood, Your Honor, because there is nothing else to say. Then the magistrate turned to the part about my parents, where the notice was valid, and Warren asked for a continuance on that portion, and it was granted, and it took 9 seconds. I had asked him to do that in the car. I did not want a possession order against my mother and father entered in that room. On that morning, with Dot sitting in the 4th row. 6 minutes. The whole thing took 6 minutes from the case being called to us standing up. I want to tell you what those 6 minutes cost, and it was not the $1,800. I stood up and picked up my coat, and I walked from the table to the door at the back, which is about 40 feet, and I had to walk past the 4th row. Aunt Bernie watched me the entire way. She did not say anything. She did not have to say anything. She turned her head as I came up the aisle, and she kept her eyes on my face for the whole length of it, past the 2nd row, past the 4th row, all the way to the door. That is the single worst 40 feet I have ever walked. In the hallway outside, by the water fountain, Kelsey passed me on her way out. She did not slow down. She said it in the tone you would use to say, "Excuse me." Mail gets lost sometimes, and she went out the double doors. I stood there by the water fountain for a second, and I thought, she is being smug about a technicality. That is what I thought. It took me almost 3 months to hear that sentence correctly. She was not gloating. She was telling me what she does. Out in the parking lot, my mother was standing by her car. She had the keys in her hand. She had not gotten in. She was on the driver's side, facing the building, and I came out and stopped about 10 feet away, and neither of us moved. I do not know how long. 10 seconds, maybe 15. Neither one of us walked toward the other one. She got in her car first. I took a load that night. Machined castings out of a shop east of Columbus going to a plant outside St. Louis, and I had it hooked and chained by 6:30, and I was on 70 West by 7, which is exactly what I wanted because there is nothing you can do with a night like that except put 400 miles under it. Nadine was running the same lane with a reefer of produce, about an hour behind me. We ended up in the same lot outside Effingham a little after midnight, nose to tail, and she walked up and knocked on my door with the back of her knuckles the way she does. She did not ask about the hearing. I had told her the date. She knew what day it was. and she stood there on the step with a cup of coffee in each hand and asked me if I had heard about the construction going in on 57 north of there. That is the whole thing about Nadine Petty, 51 years old, been out here 23 years. Hauls produce because she says it is the only freight that will not wait around for you to feel sorry for yourself. She has never once said the words, "Are you okay?" to me in 9 years. She handed me the coffee, and then she handed me a rubber-banded stack of mail. She keeps a box at a shipping store in Springfield. Anything that was not going to Ashgrove came to her, and she carried it around in the side box of her truck until she saw me, which was sometimes 6 weeks. I sat on the step of the cab and went through it. Junk. A renewal offer for a magazine I never subscribed to, a postcard from a tire shop, and a hand-addressed envelope with a Missouri postmark. I did not know the handwriting. 2 years back, I hauled a tractor for a woman outside Palmyra, Missouri. Not a semi, a farm tractor. A 1968 John Deere that her husband had spent 11 years restoring in a pole barn, down to the decals, down to the correct shade of green, which is not the shade you think it is. He died in March of that year. The daughter had a farm up outside Cedar Rapids, and the tractor was supposed to go to her, and the woman had gotten a quote from a hauling company that was more than she had, and she had put a listing on a board asking if anybody was running that way. I was running that way. I will tell you the honest reason I took it, and it is not a noble one. It was a light load on a step deck on a lane I was already deadheading. It cost me almost nothing. But when I got out there to load it, she came out of the house with an envelope of cash in her hand, counted out, in a rubber band, and it was clear she had been to the bank for it, and it was clear what it had come out of. And I told her I could not take it because I was going that way empty anyway. Which was true. She stood in the driveway and cried, and I got extremely busy with the chains for about 4 minutes until it was over because I did not know what else to do. She asked for my name, and I gave her my name and my mailing address, the one at the shipping store, because that was the address I gave people 2 years. The envelope had a Christmas card in it, late, 9 days after New Year's. The handwriting was shaky, the letters getting bigger toward the bottom of the line the way they do. She wrote that she thinks of me every year. She wrote that her daughter had the tractor out at a show in September. She wrote that she was sorry the card was late. She had been in the hospital in December for a hip, and that she was fine now. And in the card there was a photograph, the tractor, in a barn, on a concrete floor, with the light coming in behind it. Clean. Somebody had waxed the hood. On the back of the photograph, in pen, 4 words. It still starts up. I read it in the cab, at a truck stop outside Effingham, Illinois, at 12:40 in the morning. And then I read it again at 7:15 the next morning before I started the engine, with my gloves still on. Nothing about that card fixed anything. I want to say that clearly, because there is a version of this where I tell you it gave me strength and I got up and squared my shoulders, and that is not what happened. I had lost a hearing the day before because my mother signed 3 postcards. I was going to have to file the whole thing over, and pay again, and walk past Aunt Bernie again. None of that changed. Here is the only thing it did. I sat there in the dark and I did the arithmetic, and I realized that in 11 years, almost every single person who has ever said my name out loud like it meant something has been a stranger. A woman in Missouri whose husband died, a guy on a dock in Gary, Nadine. That is not a complaint. It is not even sad, exactly. It is just what the ledger says. Nadine knocked on the glass at 10 after 7. I rolled the window down, and she was standing there in her coat with the collar up, and she said one thing before she went back to her truck. "You know this isn't about whether you deserve it, right?" Then she walked off across the lot. I sat there for another minute. Then I called Warren's office and got the machine because it was 7 in the morning, and I left him 11 words. Do it again. This time we hand it to them. February was procedure. I want to walk you through it, because this is the part people skip in stories like this, and it is the part that actually works. The process server's name was Ollie, 62 years old, 20 years doing it, drives a green Buick with a clipboard on the passenger seat, $45 per successful service. He does not get paid for attempts. First attempt, February 3rd, 4 in the afternoon. 2 vehicles in the driveway, lights on inside. He rang twice, waited 9 minutes, wrote it up. Second attempt, February 6th. Kelsey opened the door. He said her name. She said, "No," and closed it. Legally interesting and practically useless. He wrote that up, too. Third attempt, February 11th. Ollie did not go to the house. He parked at the grocery on Columbus Street at 10 in the morning and waited. And at 11:50 she came out with a cart. And he walked up and said her full name. And she turned around, and he handed it to her. She took it. People almost always take it. His return of service is 1 page and reads like a weather log. Date, time, 11:52 in the morning, location, height and approximate weight. And then, because Ollie has been doing this 20 years and knows a person will stand up in a courtroom 8 weeks later and say it was somebody else, this line, wearing a camel-colored wool coat, belted, $45. Grant got his at work. That was Ollie's doing, not mine. His reasoning was that a man who works in an office is easiest to find in the office, which is true. He walked into a commercial insurance agency the following Thursday and asked for Grant Rossiter at the front desk. And Grant came out to the lobby, and 2 of his co-workers were at the copier 11 feet away. I am not going to tell you it bothered me, because it did not. And I am also not going to pretend that is admirable. I felt nothing about it. I have thought about the fact that I felt nothing about it more than I have thought about the thing itself. While that was going on, I did 3 other things. I wrote the insurance company, 2 pages, plain language, dates, what I found, when I found it, what I was doing about it. They took 11 days and came back with a premium increase of $71 a month, and the policy stayed in force, which Warren said was about the best outcome available. I called an accountant in Delaware named Rhonda, told her everything, sent her the 41 pages. She said 1 sentence I will not forget. Okay, first thing, stop apologizing. This isn't a confession. And I let the furnace maintenance contract lapse, $94 a year. I sat with that email for 2 days before I did not renew it, because that contract was the last automatic thing. There was a 4th thing. I did not change the address. I opened the federal portal for it once. On the 8th of February, sitting in a booth at a truck stop in Zanesville with a plate of eggs going cold. I got as far as the login. Then dispatch called about a permit issue on a Kentucky routing, and I closed the tablet, and I did not open it again. That is it. That is the whole story of the 4th thing. There is no more drama in it than that. On the 14th of February, my father called me. First time since December. He said hello. He asked if I was on the road. He said it had been raining in Sunbury for 2 days and that the yard was going to be a mess. He said something about the price of diesel that he had clearly read somewhere. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Jenna." And he hung up, not paused, hung up, 3 seconds after the last word, before I had gotten a syllable out. I called back 4 times over the next 2 days. It rang through every time. I have thought a lot about what he meant, whether he was sorry about the letters or about Christmas, or about something he already knew that I did not know yet. I have never asked him. That may sound strange. It will make more sense later. The second hearing was February 25th. It took 4 minutes. Kelsey did not come. She did not have to. And not coming was the correct move. And she knew it was the correct move. Grant came alone. He sat in the front row in a coat he did not take off, and he did not say anything except to confirm his name. He did not look at me once, not when he came in, not when he left. The magistrate found service proper and entered judgment for possession. Grant Rossiter and Kelsey Rossiter to vacate the premises on or before March 7th. As to my mother and father, I dismissed. Warren asked me to say it out loud in the car first, so he would know I meant it. And what I said was, "They can stay. They're not the ones running it." He said, "All right," and wrote it down, and that was all either of us ever said about it. I walked out of that building at 9:11 in the morning into a completely clear February day, the kind where the sun is out and it is still 20 degrees. And I stood on the steps and waited to feel something. I did not feel good. I want to be honest about that. I had won, and the thing I felt was tired all the way down, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I made a note about it in my phone standing right there, because it surprised me that much. It said won, felt nothing, not what I thought. I did not go out there on the 7th. I was in Kentucky with a transformer housing on the deck, and even if I had been free, I do not think I would have gone. There is nothing to see at a thing like that. It is just people carrying boxes. Ruth Ann sent me 3 clips, 4 minutes total, a rental box truck, the small kind, backed into the driveway at 9 in the morning. Kelsey directing, Grant carrying. 6 trips in and out over about 4 hours. Here is what they took. The washer and the dryer. I bought those in December of the first year. Delivered and installed. $1,140. The water heater. They took the water heater out of the wall. That is on the second clip. Grant coming out the side door of the garage, walking backward with one end of it, and Kelsey with the other. I had that put in the previous March for $1,340 because the old one was leaking at the seam. Somebody capped the supply line with duct tape. You can see it in a later clip when the garage door is up. Silver tape wrapped around a copper stub sticking out of a wall. 4 cabinet doors off the kitchen. The upper run on the sink side. Somebody unscrewed the hinges and left the screws on the counter in a little pile, which I know because I saw them there myself later. The dining room light fixture. Wires capped. A plastic cover screwed over the box. And the table. The oak table I ordered out of Zanesville in January of the year before and paid $340 extra to have delivered because I was in Texas. The table from the photograph, it goes out on the 5th clip, on its side, top down on a moving blanket, and Grant is walking backward with the legs pointing up at the sky. There was one thing they did not take. The little black lockbox stayed on the mailbox. It is in the 3rd clip, at 11 seconds in, out of focus in the corner of frame. The box truck backs past it. Nobody touches it. Nobody looks at it. I watched those 4 minutes 3 times and I did not see it. Ruth Ann stood on her own porch with her arms folded and did not pretend she was not filming. My parents did not come outside once in 4 hours. The kitchen curtain moved one time, about 2:30. That is it. I sat in a scale lot outside Louisville and watched a life get carried out of a house I bought, by people I am related to, and I understood that I had won. Then I checked my messages and there was a picture from Nadine. She had picked up my mail at the shipping store that morning and she photographs anything that looks official. Because I have asked her to. It was an envelope with a federal seal on it. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. addressed to Rossiter Hauling at 1140 Ash Grove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio, and forwarded onto the Springfield box by the post office. I never did find out why that one got forwarded and other things did not, and by the time it mattered, it did not matter. I had her open it and read it to me over the phone. The agency had received a complaint alleging falsification of records of duty status and operation in excess of hours of service limits by Rossiter Hauling. The carrier was being placed under compliance review. I was to produce complete electronic logging device records and supporting fuel documentation for the preceding 6 months, within 20 days. And then the line that I made her read to me twice. The identity of the complainant is not disclosed. I stood with my back against the trailer and asked her to read my company name off the top of the page again, because for about 4 seconds I believed it had been sent to the wrong person. Here is the thing I need you to understand. And it is not the thing you would expect. I was not afraid of the review. My logs are clean. They have always been clean. I do not run over hours. Because I am one truck. And if I lose my authority, I lose everything. And there is no company behind me to absorb it. Ask anybody who runs alone. We are the careful ones. We have to be. They could pull every minute of the last 6 months and find nothing, and I knew that standing right there in that lot. What put a cold hand on the back of my neck was something else. Somebody had made a decision. You do not file a complaint like that by accident. You do not do it in a moment of anger at 11 at night. You have to look up the agency. You have to find the form. You have to know what allegation to make, and it has to be one that actually triggers something, and you have to fill it out and submit it. Somebody sat down at a table, in a house, with a screen in front of them, and worked out where the thing I make my living with was thinnest. Not the house. Me. There is a feeling out here when you come around a bend and the bridge ahead of you has a new weight limit sign on it. Nothing is broken, the bridge is fine, but you are already loaded and chained and permitted, and the road you were going to take is simply not there anymore. That is what I felt, standing in a scale lot in Kentucky on the day I won. I drove 4 hours to Sunbury that night. I did not have a reason. I was empty. I got off at the exit and drove down Ash Grove at 10:20 at night, and I did not stop at 11:40. I do not know what I was going to do. Ruth Ann's porch light was on. She opened the door before I got to the steps, and she did not ask me why I was there. 20 days. That is what the letter gave me. 20 days to pull 6 months of my life out of a black box under a dashboard and hand it to people I had never met. In an office in the city I had never been to. Because of a complaint filed by a person whose name I was not allowed to know. I spent most of March doing that, sitting up in the bunk at 1 in the morning with a laptop on my knees, exporting files, matching fuel receipts to position pings, writing a letter about things I had not done. And the whole time I was doing that, I thought the fight was still about a house. It was not. Because while I was up at 1 in the morning proving where I had been, something was happening at a mailbox on a post at the end of a driveway in Sunbury, Ohio. It did not take a forger. It did not take a lawyer. Nobody broke into anything and nobody signed my name. It took a woman willing to write her own name on a green card, and 34 seconds. And a daughter-in-law standing just inside the door, 2:14 in the morning. The 9th of April, southbound on 65, the Scale House at Seymour, Indiana. The board on the pole says bypass most nights. That night it said pull in. That happens. It is not a sign of anything. They pull a percentage, and a permit load with an overhang gets pulled a lot more than a percentage. I have been through that scale 200 times. I came into the inspection bay, set the brakes, got my folder out of the door pocket. The inspector was maybe 40, reflective vest, flashlight, breath showing. He came up on the driver's side and I put the window down and handed him what he asked for. License, medical card, registration, bill of lading, permit, he said. How long you been running today? Since 2 this afternoon. 8 hours on duty, 6 driving. Okay. He went inside. Here's the thing about that. Normal is 4 minutes. 6 if the computer is slow. 9 if there is a line ahead of you. He was in there 17 minutes. I counted because after about 8 I started counting. I sat with the engine off and the cab going cold and watched the light in that little building and ran through it. Log was clean. Load was legal. I had scaled it in Ohio. Permit was current. Tires were fine. I had walked them at the last stop. There was nothing. He came back out and he did not have my folder open. He had it closed, under his arm. Which is not how they come back when they are going to write you up for a marker light. He said, "Ma'am, are you aware your operating authority's been revoked?" I said, "No, I want to be exact." I did not say what. I did not say that's impossible. I said no, and it came out flat, because the front of your brain hears a sentence, and the back of your brain has already understood it, and the two of them are about 4 seconds apart. He turned his screen around, which he did not have to do. Under the carrier name, where it says operating status, it did not say authorized for property. It said not authorized. And underneath that, the reason, insurance canceled, no replacement filing. I said, I pay that. It comes out of the business account. I can show you. And I did. I opened my banking app with him standing at my window and turned the phone around. And there it was. A debit to the insurance company the previous month, the same amount as always. He looked at it. He was not unkind about it. I don't doubt you, ma'am, but I don't handle that side of it. All I can go by is what's in the system. Then he told me what was happening. Out of service order, effective right there in the bay. The truck does not move with that load on it. Not to the next exit. Not anywhere. He said if I operated in that condition, the penalty starts at $13,676. He read the number off the screen. He read it in a completely ordinary voice, the way you would read a phone number. That is the part I keep. Not the number, the voice. He asked me if I had someone I could call. I said I would figure it out. He gave me the paperwork. For what it's worth, this happens more than you'd think. Usually it's a filing that didn't go through. Then he said good luck and went back inside. And the next truck came around into the bay behind me. 3 a.m. I called the shipper. That is a call I would not wish on anybody. You wake a dispatcher at 3 a.m. and tell him his freight is sitting on a step deck in a scale house in Indiana and is not going to move. And that he needs to find a truck. He was decent about it. Decenter than he had to be. He said, "Are you all right?" before he said anything about the load. They sent somebody out of Louisville at 9. The transfer took 2 hours. And the whole thing had to be moved to a lot 4 miles up the road under an escort. Because a scale house is not a place with a forklift, I did not sleep. Sometime around 5, before the sun came up. I climbed back in the cab and sat in the driver's seat because there was nowhere else to sit. And I noticed after a while that both my hands were on the wheel. Engine off. Keys in my pocket. Truck was not going anywhere for the next 34 days. And I was sitting in an unheated cab at 5 a.m. in Indiana, holding onto a steering wheel with both hands, like I was coming down a grade. I made myself let go. It took a second. Then I opened the calendar on my phone. I did not know anything yet. I did not know about the mailbox. I did not know about February 11th. I did not know about $96,000. The only thing I knew, sitting there at 5 in the morning, was that the system said my insurance had lapsed, and that there is a 30-day window on that. And that means somewhere behind me there was a date. So I counted back. 30 days before the 9th of April. I put my thumb on the screen and went backward through the little squares. March 9th. Then I went back further. Because 30 days is when it gets revoked, not when it starts. And I stopped on a square in the first week of February and sat looking at it in the dark. I made 4 phone calls that morning from a booth at a travel plaza off exit 50, and each one took a layer off. The first was the insurance company. Not Denise, a different department, commercial auto. The woman there had it in about 90 seconds. The policy ran out on the 1st of March. It did not get canceled for non-payment. It expired. On schedule. At the end of its term. And I said, nobody told me it was expiring. And she said, the renewal notice went out February 4th. I asked how. She said certified mail, return receipt requested, to the address on the account. Then she said, it was signed for, on the 7th. I sat in that booth with a cup of coffee going cold in front of me, and I asked her to read the address on the account. 1140 Ash Grove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio. I asked her to read the name on the return receipt. She said a signature was recorded, but the imaged card was not in her view, and that she could request it, and it would take 3 to 5 business days. Second call. The federal side. This one I already understood before I made it. But I needed to hear it out of a person. When a commercial policy terminates, the insurer files a notice with the agency. That starts a clock, 30 days. If no replacement filing comes in before that clock runs out, the authority is revoked, automatically. There is no hearing and no human being who looks at it. I asked if anybody calls. She said no. I asked if anybody emails. She said there is a notice of pending revocation that goes out. I asked how. She said by mail to the address of record. March 3rd. Mailed March 3rd. To 1140 Ash Grove Lane, Sunbury, Ohio. And that one was signed for, too. Here is what I want you to understand about that, because it is the whole thing. And it took me a long time to be able to say it in one sentence. The entire structure that lets me work runs on paper going to one address. Not email. Not a phone call. The renewal. The cancellation notice. The pending revocation. The registration. The permits. Every one of them is paper mailed to whatever address is in a field on a form, and the system assumes the person on that form will read it. That is not a flaw somebody hid. It is just how it works. Third call. My agent. To buy new coverage. Fast. Helpful. And about 40% more than I had been paying, because I now had a lapse on my record. And a lapse is a lapse whether you caused it or not. Fourth call. Warren? I told him the whole thing start to finish, and it took maybe 6 minutes, and he did not say a word until I was done. Then he said one thing. Who gets the mail, I said. What, he said it again. Slower. At that house. Physically. Who walks out to the box? And I sat there in a plastic booth in Indiana with my hand flat on the table. There is a small black lockbox on the mailbox at 1140 Ash Grove Lane. It is a combination box, 4 dials, the kind real estate agents hang on a door. It went up on the 4th of December. I looked directly at it on the 22nd of December from a borrowed pickup 2 houses away, and decided it was for my father's spare key. I stood at the end of Ruth Ann Coyle's driveway on the 15th of January and asked how long it had been there, and she read me the date out of a spiral notebook, and I nodded and said it was for the guests. She offered to take it off. I said, "Leave it. Nobody forged a signature." I want to say that as clearly as I can, because when I tell people this, they always jump ahead and guess forgery, and forgery is not what happened here. Nobody broke into a mailbox either. That is a federal crime, and none of them are stupid. Here is the entire mechanism. Certified mail comes to a house, addressed to a company. The carrier will hand it to any responsible person who lives at that address. And my mother is a responsible person who lives at that address. So she signs the green card and carries the envelope inside, and then somebody else in that house takes it from her. That is it. That is all of it. There is no crime in the first half of that sentence at all. I did the arithmetic on the back of the placemat. The truck grosses about $1,400 on a day it runs. It was the 9th of April. I wrote 1,400 at the top, and I started multiplying. And then I stopped. Because I did not know the denominator yet. I did not know how many days. Then I did something I have thought about a lot since. I flipped the placemat over and wrote one line on the clean side. $2,900 in legal fees so far to protect a house, and underneath it $0 to protect the mailbox. I paid for the coffee. I rented a car at the counter in the truck stop, one of those little ones that come with the plaza, $39 a day. I left my truck in the back row of a lot in Seymour, Indiana, and I drove 3.5 hours east. I got to Ash Grove Lane a little after 4 in the afternoon on the 9th of April. I did not pull into 1140. I parked at Ruth Ann's, the way I had every time, and I got out and I walked across the street. I want to tell you about that mailbox, because I had walked past it maybe 40 times in 2 years, and I had never once looked at it. Galvanized steel, the standard size. On a 4x4 post my father set in concrete the first spring. Painted black once, and the black had gone chalky on the sun side. The house numbers are stick-on vinyl, and the 4 has been crooked since the day he put them on, and he has never straightened it. And my mother has mentioned it probably 100 times. And on the handle, hanging from a hooked shackle, a black combination lock box with 4 brass dials. I stood there and looked at it for a while. I did not touch it. Ruth Ann came out. She had the notebook under her arm before she was off the porch, which tells you she had been expecting some version of this since January. She opened it on the hood of the rental car and turned to the 4th of December and put her finger on the line, 11:40 in the morning, and 3 words in the margin. New, black one. 2 weeks before that phone call, I said. 2 weeks before that phone call. Then she said, "I saw who put it on." I said, "The camera." And she said, "The camera only keeps 30 days. She let that sit for exactly as long as it needed to. Then she said, "I've been downloading it since October. I would like you to imagine standing in a driveway in April and hearing that sentence." She took me inside and set a laptop on the kitchen table. It was 6 or 7 years old and slow to wake up. She plugged in an external hard drive she bought at a big box store in Delaware, and she opened it. And it was folders. Folders by date. Every single one named the same way. Month, day, year, no spaces. She said she started in October because that is when the strangers started. And she said it the way you would explain why you keep a jar of rubber bands. 30 years in a courthouse. We went through it for 4 hours. She wrote the times on a legal pad while I ran the clips, and she wrote them in a column with the seconds included. And I did not have to ask her to. Here is December 4th, 11:38 in the morning. Kelsey's car comes into the driveway. She gets out with a small paper sack. 11:40. She walks down to the mailbox. She takes something out of the sack, hangs it on the handle, And then she stands there working the dials with her head down for about 40 seconds. She tries it, opens it, closes it, spins it, tries it again. Then she goes up the walk and inside. That is all it is. A woman hanging a key box on a mailbox in the middle of the morning. If you saw it, you would not think about it for 1 second. And I did not. 400 feet away. 18 days later. Then Ruth Ann clicked on February 7th. The mail carrier's truck stops at the end of the driveway. He gets out with a clipboard and one envelope and walks up. The storm door opens. My mother is in a navy jacket pulled on over a nightgown at 11 in the morning. She signs. He tears the card off and hands her the envelope and goes back down the walk. She goes inside with it, and then Ruth Ann said, "Watch, 34 seconds, the front door opens again and Kelsey comes out. Camel coat, keys already in her hand. She goes down the walk, not fast, not looking around. And there is a white envelope in her left hand. She gets in her car and backs out and turns north on Ash Grove, and she is gone. 34 seconds between my mother carrying an envelope in the front door and my brother's wife carrying an envelope out of it." I asked Ruth Ann to play it again. She played it 4 times. Then she opened March 3rd, and it was nearly the same clip. Same carrier, same door, same woman signing at 11 in the morning. 41 seconds this time instead of 34. Same camel coat, same envelope, same car going north on Ash Grove. I sat back in that chair in that kitchen, and I put my hands over my face for a second, which is not something I do, and then I asked her the question I did not want to ask. Did my mother know what was in them? Ruth Ann did not answer right away. She is not a woman who says things to make you feel better, and she is not a woman who says things to make you feel worse. She went and got the coffee pot even though neither of us wanted coffee. And she poured 2 cups, and she sat back down. Then she said, "I don't know that." But she looked at the front of the envelope both times. She turned her cup a quarter turn. And both times she came out fast. She had her shoes on, I said. And Ruth Ann said, "So I think she knew it was something." On the 11th of April, a man called me from Indianapolis about a late payment. I was sitting in Ruth Ann's front room with a laptop on a folding tray, and the phone rang with a number I did not know. And I almost let it go. He was polite. He worked for an equipment finance company. He said he was calling about the account for Rossiter Hauling, and that the March and April installments had not come in, and he wanted to see if there was a hardship situation, because they have programs for that. I said, "I don't have a loan." He said, "Ma'am, I'm showing an account funded on February 14th. I said it again, I don't have a loan. I paid my truck off in June of last year. I own it outright. I have the title in a fireproof box in a storage unit in Findlay, Ohio." He said, "Okay, let me read you what I've got. $96,000. Funded February 14th. Purpose, purchase of a used step deck trailer." And he read the make and the model, year, and a serial number. Monthly payment $2,140. First payment due March 15th. I asked him where the trailer was. He said, according to the file it was delivered. I said, "Delivered to who?" He said, "To the borrower, ma'am. I got the whole file over the next 9 days, in pieces, through Warren, because that is how you get it. They do not just hand it to you on the phone, and here is what a $100,000 equipment loan actually requires. In this business, in this decade, and I want to lay it out because when people hear fraud, they think of movies. There is no movie in it. The application is electronic. You submit the company's federal identification numbers, the operating authority number, a certificate of insurance, and 2 years of business bank statements. Every one of those things is a piece of paper that comes to an address. 2 years of statements come to an address. The insurance certificate comes to an address. The registration comes to an address. There is one document in the entire package that has to be notarized. 1. The personal guarantee. The page that says, if the company does not pay. The human being signs for it personally. The rest is clicks. The contact on the file, the person the finance company had been talking to for 3 weeks in January and February, the person who took the phone calls and sent the documents back and answered the underwriter's questions, was listed by name, Grant Rossiter. Title, Operations Manager, Rossiter Hauling. There is no operations manager at Rossiter Hauling. There is a driver, and the driver is the owner, and the owner is me. The trailer sold in 9 days. It went to a dealer outside Fort Wayne on the 23rd of February. I have the bill of sale. It went for $62,000, which is what you get when you need it gone. Warren put the timeline up on a whiteboard in his office, and I want to give it to you the way I saw it that afternoon. Because when it is in order, it stops being a mystery and becomes something much worse, which is a plan. January 28th. The eviction case against Grant and Kelsey is dismissed for bad service, and Kelsey walks out of that courthouse knowing she has bought maybe a month. That same week, an application goes in. February 7th. The insurance renewal notice is signed for and walks out the front door in a camel coat. February 11th. At 11:52 in the morning, in the parking lot of a grocery store on Columbus Street. Ollie hands Kelsey Rossiter a notice to vacate, in person, correctly, and puts down her coat color in his report. She had the paper in her hand at 11:52. At 2:22 that same afternoon, her car is back in the driveway at 1140 Ash Grove Lane. At 2:29, a silver sedan pulls in behind it, and a man in a navy coat gets out with a small leather case and a square box. At 2:31, my mother opens the door and lets them both in. At 2:40, on a document I have a copy of, a notary named Curtis Yaw certified that the person named on the personal guarantee appeared before him and signed it. At 2:53, the silver sedan leaves. At 2:57, Kelsey leaves. February 14th, 3 days later, $96,000 funds. February 23rd, the trailer is sold. February 25th, a magistrate orders Grant and Kelsey to be out of the house by March 7th. March 3rd, the notice of pending revocation of my operating authority is signed for at that mailbox and carried out the front door. I stood in front of that whiteboard, and I did not say anything for a while. Then I said the only thing I had. They never touched the house, Warren said. No. The house was never the point after January. He said, the house is a building. It's worth what it's worth, and it sits there. Your authority is worth $1,400 a day, and it can be turned off from a mailbox. That is the sentence. That is the whole story in one sentence. From a man in a shirt a size too big in the shoulders, standing in front of a whiteboard on a Tuesday in April. I had spent 4 months and thousands of dollars standing in front of a door. And they went around the side and took the name off the truck. The thing that saved me was the thing that was supposed to destroy me. I want to be careful about how I say that, because it is the kind of line that sounds designed, and I promise you nothing about it was designed. On the 7th of March, a complaint I did not file, from a person I am not allowed to know, put my company under a compliance review and ordered me to produce complete electronic logging device records and supporting fuel documentation for the preceding 6 months. 6 months. Which meant that on the 11th of April, when Warren asked me whether I could prove where I was on the afternoon of February 11th, I did not have to go looking for anything. It was already sitting in a folder on my laptop, exported, sorted, and cross-referenced, because I had spent most of March doing exactly that in a bunk at 1 in the morning. I pulled the file up on Ruth Ann's kitchen table and I scrolled to February 11th. Here is what an electronic logging device actually is, for anybody who has never sat behind one. It is a black plastic box about the size of a paperback, bolted under the dash, wired into the engine control module. It knows when the engine turns, how fast, when you stop, and it puts a position on every status change. You cannot edit drive time. That is the whole point of it. You can annotate. You cannot make the truck have been somewhere it was not. Drivers hate it. I hated it. For 2 years I called it the babysitter. February 11th. 6:02 in the morning, on duty driving, position Effingham, Illinois. 2:12 in the afternoon. Status change to on duty not driving. Position. A fuel stop on 70 at Terre Haute, Indiana. 2:31. Fuel purchase. 178.4 gallons. Pump 11. There is a receipt, a transaction record from the fuel card company, and a camera over that island the way there is over every island in this country. 3:04. Status change back to driving. At 2:31 in the afternoon on the 11th of February, I was standing on a concrete island at a fuel stop in Terre Haute, Indiana, with a nozzle in my hand. At 2:31 in the afternoon on the 11th of February, my mother was opening her front door for a notary in Sunbury, Ohio. 310 miles. I sat and looked at those 2 lines next to each other for a long time. And then I said it out loud, in a kitchen, to a 71-year-old woman. If nobody had filed that complaint, I would not have had this. I would have had to request an export from the logging company. That takes days. And their retention on detailed position data is what it is. And by April, I would have been right at the edge of it. The complaint was filed to end my career. The complaint is the reason I could prove I was 310 miles away. I am not going to tell you that is justice, because it is not. It is an accident. The kind that happens when somebody used to winning gets in a hurry. Ruth Ann did not say anything about God or karma or things happening for a reason, which I appreciated more than I can tell you. She said, "Print 2 copies. Then Warren asked me for one more thing. And it was not about February at all. He said the defense is going to be that this was a family arrangement. Everything at that address was shared. The company was a family company in practice. Grant had authority nobody wrote down. The house was really the parents' house. And the whole thing is a business dispute inside one family that a prosecutor should not be in the middle of." And he said, "Is there anything in your mother's own handwriting that says that house is yours?" I sat there. And then I drove 3.5 hours west to Seymour, Indiana, to a truck sitting in the back row of a lot with nowhere to go, and I climbed up into the cab and opened the glove box. Behind the fuel receipts, in the notebook, a card with a cardinal on the front, a check for $4,000, dated in August, never cashed. And on the memo line in the corner, in handwriting that slants hard to the right, 4 words, "For your house." I drove it back to Ohio and put it on Warren's desk. He picked it up by the corner and turned it under the desk lamp, and he read the memo line, and he did not smile, because he does not. He said, "You kept this for sentimental reasons?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's valuable for a different reason." Then he explained it in plain language, and I will give it to you the same way. If your mother's position is that the house is morally hers, that everything at that address is shared, that you were only ever a name on a piece of paper, then this is her 7 months earlier, in her own hand, with a date on it, calling it your house. He made 2 calls that afternoon. one to the finance company in Indianapolis, one to the state office that licenses notaries. He did not call the police. I asked him why not, and he said, because the notary is going to talk, and he's going to talk to the licensing board before he talks to anybody with a badge, and I want to know what he says before they do. 34 days. That is the number. And I am going to spend some time on it, because everything before this in my story happened fast and this part did not happen at all. The truck sat in the back row of a lot in Seymour, Indiana. $22 a night. Here is what getting your authority back actually looks like. You buy a new policy, about 40% higher because of the lapse. The new carrier files their form with the agency electronically, and you wait for it to post, which is not the same day. Then you file the application for reinstatement and pay the fee, which is $80. Then you wait for the system to update. $80. Put that next to the other number in this story. $80 to turn it back on. $47,600 to have had it off. Where I slept in those 34 days. 11 nights in the truck at the lot in Seymour. The truck was not impounded. It just could not move with freight. And a lot is a lot. 9 nights on the fold-out in Ruth Ann Coyle's back room. On a mattress with a bar in it, I could feel through 2 blankets, under a shelf of ceramic birds. 4 nights at Nadine's in Springfield, in a room her husband keeps his fishing gear in, with a rod rack on the wall over the bed. The rest at a motel off 37, $58 a night, which after the 4th night begins to feel like an enormous amount of money. And I want to say the thing plainly. There was a 4-bedroom house 40 minutes from where I was sleeping. 2 baths, half-finished basement, 2-car garage, built in 1996, $312,000. My name on the deed, alone, with no lien on it, for 2 years and 5 months. I did not spend 1 night in it. I lost 2 customers. One called me himself and told me straight, which I respect. He could not have a carrier with a revocation on the record because his insurer looks at that. That is a fair reason. The other one just stopped answering. Everybody in this business knows that is worse. I did the arithmetic on the 18th day. 34 days at roughly $1,400 a day. $47,600. Then I did something that was not good for me. I divided it into the price of the house. $47,600 is a little over 15% of $312,000. So somebody took 1/6 of that house away from me a second time, out of the other pocket, and it did not cost them anything to do it. I want to talk about the nights, because that is the actual answer to what it was like. You cannot fix it faster by caring more. Every step is a queue with somebody else's hand on it. There is no number you can call to make a database update sooner, and no version of you being upset that shortens it by an hour. So you sit. I have driven 11 years. I am good at sitting. I have waited 9 hours at a dock in Laredo without getting worked up about it. This was not that. At a dock, you are waiting for something that is coming. That is the difference. And I did not have words for it until about the 3rd week. When you are shut down, you are not waiting for something. You are just absent. The freight is moving. The lanes are running. The whole country is going about its business, and you are a hole where a truck used to be. And every day that goes by, you become slightly less real to the people who used to call you. 9th night at Ruth Ann's, 2 a.m. I got up to get a glass of water. The light was on in the kitchen. She was at the table in a housecoat with her reading glasses on, and she had a stack of manila envelopes and a fine tip marker, and she was labeling them. She had gone through her folders and was putting each date in its own envelope, with the date on the tab and a second line under it saying what was on the clip. February 7th. Mail carrier, Signature, 34 seconds. December 4th. Lockbox install, 11:40. Nobody had asked her to do that. I stood in the doorway for a second, and then I did not say anything about it. Because I knew if I said anything about it, she would say it was nothing and go to bed. I sat down in the chair across from her and picked up a marker and started on the other end of the stack. We worked until about 4. The reinstatement came through on the 13th of May. I checked the system at 7 in the morning the way I had checked it every morning for 34 days. And where it had said not authorized, there was a different line. I did not do anything. I did not yell. I sat in a motel room in Seymour, Indiana, and looked at a phone screen. I took a load that afternoon, structural steel out of a yard in Columbus, Indiana, going up to Michigan. Not a good load. I would have turned it down in January, and about 3 miles out, with the truck loaded and the straps tight and the engine pulling the way it does. I started crying so hard I had to get over into the right lane. It lasted maybe 2 minutes. Then it stopped, and it did not come back, and that is the only time in this entire year that it happened. The deposition was in July, in a conference room at a firm in Delaware, Ohio, with a window unit that came on every 11 minutes and made everybody stop talking until it settled. Long table, bottled water on a tray nobody touched, a court reporter at the end with her machine. There were no police in that room. Nobody was handcuffed. Nobody stood up and pointed at anybody. I say that because I know what people expect from a story like this. And what actually happens is 4 people at a table for 2 hours while a man in a shirt a size too big asks questions in a flat voice, and a stenographer types. Kelsey had a lawyer this time. She answered in 4 words or less. Every single time. Do you recognize this document? I've seen it. Did you install this lockbox? I don't recall. Were you at that address on February 11th? I don't recall. 11 times. I counted, because Ruth Ann had taught me to count things and write them down, and by the 4th one I was keeping a tally in the margin like a woman counting axles. Warren did not raise his voice once. He put things on the table. 1. A photograph of the mailbox at 1140 Ash Grove Lane, taken by me on the 9th of April, with the lockbox on the handle. 2. A page from a spiral notebook, December 4th, 11:40 in the morning, 3 words in the margin. New, black one. 3. A still frame from a doorbell camera, December 4th, 11:40 in the morning. A woman in a camel coat at that mailbox with her head down, working the dials. 4. 2 still frames. February 7th and March 3rd. Front door open, my mother signing. Then the same door, 34 seconds later, and 41 seconds later. Camel coat, white envelope. 5. 2 return receipt cards from 2 different institutions, imaged and produced. Both signed in handwriting that slants hard to the right. 6. The personal guarantee on a $96,000 equipment loan with a notarial certificate on the back. Dated February 11th, 2:40 in the afternoon. 7. 2 lines out of an electronic logging device export, and a fuel card transaction record, and a receipt, Terre Haute, Indiana, 2:31 in the afternoon, 178.4 gallons, and 8. A sworn statement from Curtis Yaw. He had given it 3 weeks earlier, to the state board that licenses notaries, before anybody with a badge had spoken to him. Exactly the way Warren said he would. Curtis Yaw did not choose Kelsey Rossiter. He chose his commission. That is not a moral failing, and it is not a redemption. It is a 49-year-old man with a mortgage doing arithmetic. His statement is 1.5 pages, and it is the plainest document in the file. He says he had done closings with Kelsey Rossiter's brokerage before and knew her professionally. He says he was asked to come to a residence to notarize a signature on a financing document. He says the man at the table, who identified himself as Grant Rossiter, told him that the signer, his sister, had already executed the page earlier that day at another location and could not be there. He says he notarized it anyway. He says he had done it before for people he knew, that it is common in his line of work, and that he understood at the time that it was improper. There is one sentence in the middle of it that I have read more times than the rest of the document put together. He wrote, "I did not ask why she could not be there." Kelsey's lawyer asked for a break right after Warren read that sentence into the record. 14 minutes. I went out into the hall, and my father was sitting on a plastic chair against the wall by the elevator. He had been there since 1 o'clock. He was scheduled after her, and depositions run long, and nobody had told him he could go get lunch, so he had not. He was wearing the button-down, the funeral shirt, and he had his cap in his hands, on his knee, and he was turning it slowly by the brim, around and around, the way he does when he is in a room he does not think he belongs in. 2 hours. Nobody had spoken to him. Nobody had brought him a water. He was not a party and not a witness anybody was fighting over, and there was not one person in that building with a reason to look at him. When I came out, he stood up. He stood up fast, the way you do when you have been rehearsing, and he said 3 words. "I didn't know. I want to tell you what I did, and I am not going to make it sound better than it was." I kept walking. I went past him, down the hall, to the water fountain at the end, and I stood there with my hand on it, and I did not turn around. I heard the chair take his weight again behind me. That is the hardest thing I did in that entire year. Not the letters, not the courtroom, not the scale house at 2 in the morning. Walking past a 63-year-old man in a funeral shirt holding his hat. The deposition ended at 4:10. Warren did not say anything in the elevator. He did not say anything crossing the lobby. Out in the parking lot, with his hand on the door of his car, he said, "That's it." He did not say what it meant, and I did not ask. Here is what it cost everybody. I am going to go in order of who was most responsible, because that is the only order that makes sense to me. Curtis Yaw lost his commission. The state revoked it in August. He lost the job at the title company the same week, because a title company cannot employ a man who cannot notarize. He was charged with making a false certificate, and he took a plea. I saw him once, in a hallway, and he did not look at me. Grant is the one who signed. Whatever Kelsey knew about lockboxes and closings and what a lender will accept, my brother is the man who sat across from a notary and said out loud that his sister had already signed a page she had never seen. He pled to 1 count: suspended sentence, supervision, and restitution. $96,000 on a payment plan that runs until he is 60. He lost his insurance license, which was the only thing he had that took a test. He did not write me a letter. He did not call. 6 months later, he sent a text message with 3 words in it, and I will come back to that. Kelsey lost her real estate license. That is what she actually lost, not the money. She is 34, and she will make money again. The license was the thing that made her the person in that family who knew how a mailbox and a notarial certificate work. The board took it in September. On the criminal side, the prosecutor did not have enough on the loan. She never signed anything, and I don't recall is not a crime. What they did have was the mail. She pled to a misdemeanor for the interception, fine, community service, and a record. Nothing that would satisfy anybody watching from the outside. She and Grant separated in September. I found that out from Ruth Ann Coyle, who heard it at the pharmacy in Sunbury, which is how I find out most things about my own family now. And then there is my mother. This is the part I have the hardest time telling. She signed 2 green cards and she carried 2 envelopes into a house, and she handed them to somebody who walked out the front door with them 34 seconds later. She did not plan it. She would not have known what a pending revocation notice was if she had opened it and read it twice. But she looked at the front of both envelopes, and both times she had her shoes on at 11 in the morning. The prosecutor's office put her in a diversion program. First offense, over 60, a written statement accepting responsibility, community service hours, and if she completes it, the charge comes off her record entirely. I want to be honest about how I feel about that. And the honest answer is, I do not know. I have had a year and I still do not know. Warren asked me before he filed anything whether I wanted my mother prosecuted, and I could not answer him. And then he told me the thing I had not understood, which is that it was not up to me. Once the file goes to the prosecutor, the decision belongs to a person in a county office who has never met any of us. He said, "You choose whether to hand it over. After that, you don't choose anything." I handed it over. In September, I got an envelope in the mail from the prosecutor's office, forwarded to Nadine's box in Springfield. Inside was a photocopy of my mother's written statement of responsibility. 3 sentences, her handwriting, that hard right slant. I read it one time. Then I put it in the notebook in the glove box, in the card with the cardinal on the front, folded against the check she wrote in August. The 2 pieces of paper my mother has given me in this lifetime are in the same envelope, and they say opposite things. And I have never taken either of them out again. My father was not investigated. Nobody charged him. Nobody deposed him in the end, because the case settled before they got to him. He sat in a hallway on a plastic chair for 2 hours in July, in a shirt he wears to funerals, and then everybody went home. I have thought about that a lot. He is the only person in this entire story who did not lose anything, and I think that is the worst sentence in it. The civil side finished in August. The finance company wrote the loan off my company's record once they had Curtis Yaw's statement, which is what an honest lender does when the paperwork falls apart in their own hands. I sued for the business interruption and it settled. The number does not matter. It did not cover the 34 days and it did not cover the 2 customers. Settlements are not for making you whole. They are for making a thing stop. And Warren told me that at the beginning and he was right at the end. And on the 22nd of July, the compliance review closed. 1 page, 3 paragraphs. Records of duty status were reviewed for the period. No violations were identified. The complaint was not substantiated. No action will be taken. I read it standing next to my truck at a rest area on 70 near Zanesville, and I felt absolutely nothing for about 30 seconds. And then I felt it all at once. And I got in the cab and shut the door. I never told a single driver about that letter. Not one, not to this day. For 4 months, nobody in this industry knew my authority had ever been down, and I decided that was going to stay true. My parents moved out on the 20th of August. Nobody evicted them. I want that clear, because the court file says what it says, and the court file is not the whole story. Warren worked out a voluntary agreement in July. A date, a walkthrough, keys handed back. No judgment against either of them. Nothing in the public file with the word possession in it. They took a 2-bedroom on the north side of Sunbury, in a complex built in the 80s with a shared laundry and a strip of grass out front. I paid the deposit, $950 plus the first month, wired to a leasing office by a woman 300 miles away who did not put her name on anything. I never told them. Warren handled it, and to my knowledge my mother believes to this day that the complex waived it because my father is a veteran, which he is not, and I do not know where that story came from. I am not going to dress that up. I do not want you to hear it as a beautiful gesture. I did it because I could not sleep with the arithmetic. My father is 63 with a back that ended his working life at 47. My mother is 61. Between them there is Social Security and a small pension from the school district and nothing else, because everything else went in 2011. If I do nothing, they go where people with nothing go. I could not carry that, so I paid $950 to not have to. That is the honest accounting. It is not forgiveness. Forgiveness is a thing you say to somebody. I did not say anything to anybody. On the 23rd of August, I drove to 1140 Ashgrove Lane and let myself in with my own key. The house was empty. You do not know what empty sounds like until you stand in a house with nothing in it. There is a ring on it. Your boots come back at you off the walls. 4 cabinet doors missing on the sink side. Screws still in a pile on the counter where somebody set them down in March. A rectangle on the utility room wall, a shade lighter than the paint around it. Copper stub with silver tape wrapped around it. Gray at the edges now. The soap dish in the hall bathroom still had a bar of soap in it. That is the detail that got me. Everything else was gone, and there was a used bar of soap sitting there. I walked from the front window in the living room to the back wall of the kitchen, counting 19 steps. $312,000? 2 years and 9 months? 4 months of court, $4,300 in legal fees, 34 days shut down, $47,600 gone. 19 steps. I sat down on the floor with my back against the kitchen island for a while. Then I got up and started making a list. That is genuinely what I do. You take an ugly load and you do not stand there looking at it. You get the tape measure out, write down every dimension, and decide what gets chained first. There is a whole part of my brain that only knows how to do that, and it is the part that got me through August. I made the list in the order you do a load. Heaviest first. Water heater, washer and dryer hookups, cabinet doors, dining room fixture. Then I made a second list, and the second list had one thing on it. Change the address. I did that on the 24th of August, on my phone, sitting on the kitchen floor, because the house had no chairs in it. 19 minutes. $23. I held my thumb over that button for a while before I pressed it, and I could not have told you why. Then I went out to the mailbox with a screwdriver. I put a new box on the post, same steel, same size. I straightened the 4, which my father never did in 2 years and 9 months. And the lockbox went in the metal trash can at the end of the driveway. You can hear it hit. That is a hollow can, and there was nothing in it. And it went in from about waist high, and it rang. I stood there for a second and listened to that. That first night I slept in the south bedroom. I had a sleeping bag and a camp pad and nothing else in the house yet. The south bedroom is the room in the listing, $118 a night. My flea market barn print was still on the wall over where the bed had been, because it was not worth taking. I lay down on the floor at about 10:30, and I could not sleep. And it was not what you think. It was too quiet. 5 years of sleeping 18 inches from a diesel engine at fast idle. 5 years of that noise being the thing that meant safe, meant fuel, meant heat, meant the truck is fine and you are fine and it is all still here. A house at 11 at night in Sunbury, Ohio, in August. Makes no sound at all. I got up at midnight and dug the box fan out of my truck and set it on the floor and turned it on high, and I put it facing the wall so it was only noise and not wind. Then I slept. He knocked at 6 in the evening on a Thursday at the end of September. He did not call first. I do not think he could have. I opened the door and my father was standing on the step with a tool bag in his hand. And behind him in the bed of the Silverado, strapped down with a ratchet strap he had put on properly, was a water heater in the box. 40-gallon. Same size as the one that came out of the wall. He bought it himself. I know what those cost, and I know what he has. And he had been putting money aside since at least midsummer. He did not say he was sorry. He said it once in February on the phone and hung up before I could answer. And he was never going to do that again. What he said, standing on my step, was, "Is your hot water working?" I said no. He said, "Well, that is the whole apology. That is what one looks like from him." We carried it down together, which took a while because I would not let him take the low end on the stairs and he did not fight me on it. And that is its own kind of conversation. 31 years a heating and airman. This is the thing he is better at than anybody I have ever met, and the only thing he had left to give me, and he came and gave it. We worked about 3 hours in that basement. He talked me through it the way he talks, not teaching, narrating, shut the main off, bleed it, sweat that fitting, don't crowd it, let it draw. Pipe dope on the threads. Not tape. Tape is for people in a hurry. I handed him things. He set them down one where I could reach them without asking. Somewhere around 8:30 he was tightening a strap clamp on the cold inlet, down on one knee on the concrete, not looking at me. And he started talking about something else. He said, "In 2011 I signed something I didn't read. I did not say anything." He said my mother put it in front of him at the kitchen table on Beckley Street and told him it was for the second mortgage. And it was, and he did not read it. And he still could not tell me what was on the third page. I've never told anybody that. Not your mother. She knows I signed it. She doesn't know I didn't read it. Then he said the part he has been carrying the longest. After that, he decided he did not get a vote anymore. Not about money, not about paper, not about anything with a signature line on it. He had lost the house he raised us in because he did not read something. And a man who does that does not get opinions about the finances in his own home ever again. 14 years. He said Grant and Kelsey moved in October, and he knew. He said he did not know about the rooms being rented until January. And I believe him, because he does not have a phone that does that, and he does not go looking. He said he did not know about the letters until a lawyer called the house in April. And then he turned the clamp a quarter turn more than it needed, and he said it. I didn't say anything. That's not the same as not knowing. I knew I wasn't saying anything. I did not tell him it was okay. I want you to know that, because it is the part I am least sure about, and would change the least. I did not say it was okay. I did not say I forgave him, and I did not tell him it was not his fault, because I do not believe any of those 3 things. What I did was hand him the next wrench, and he took it, and he went back to work, and neither of us said anything for about 10 minutes. Then he asked me a question with his head still down inside the housing. He said, "Did you find that shoe box?" I said, "What shoe box?" He said, "Your grandmother's letters. The one on the shelf." I told him the shelf was empty. Everything on it was gone. The paint cans, the extension cord, all of it. And he said, "It's up in the joists." He put it there in February, after the first call from the finance company, before anybody knew what any of it was, when the only thing he understood was that people were taking things out of that house, and nobody was stopping them. He went down and put my grandmother's letters up between 2 floor joists, behind the ductwork where you cannot see them unless you know. He hid exactly one thing in this entire story. He hid the right one. I got the stepladder and climbed up and felt back behind the trunk line, and it was there. Shoebox. Rubber band gone flat and hard. Exactly the way I left it on a shelf 2 years and 9 months earlier. I brought it down and sat on the bottom step of the basement stairs and opened it. I did not read any of them. Not that night. I just opened the lid and looked at them. Packed on edge. The envelope soft with age. And my father stood there with a wrench in his hand and let me. The hot water came on at 9:40. He went to the utility sink and ran it and put his hands under it. And he stood there like that for a long time. Longer than you need to rinse your hands. I did not say anything about that either. The next Christmas I was in that house. By then I had 4 new cabinet doors on the sink side. They do not match the 8 old ones. The old ones have 29 years of hand oil on the bottom edge, and the new ones are the same species and the same stain, and they are not the same color, and they never will be. I decided not to refinish the whole run. I want to be clear that this was not symbolic. I did not stand there thinking anything meaningful about scars. I priced it out. $400 and a weekend to sand and stain, 12 doors so nobody would ever know 4 had been replaced. And I would rather have the $400. The table I bought is round. 6 chairs. $65 at a consignment place in Delaware. Solid. Some water rings on it already from somebody else's life. I hauled it home on a 53-foot step deck. 1 table, in the middle of a deck built for 20-ton machine bases, 2 straps on it. I am aware of how that looked. So was the man at the light on 37 who put his window down to ask about it. Who was at that table? Ruth Ann Coyle, from across the street, 71 years old, who brought a green bean casserole and then spent the first 20 minutes reorganizing my silverware drawer without asking. Nadine Petty and her husband Ray, who drove up from Springfield. And Ollie, the process server, 62, green Buick. Nadine invited him. They met once at my place and got to talking about a fishing spot on Indian Lake, and that was that. Nobody at that table thought it was strange that the man who served my brother's wife with a notice to vacate was passing the rolls. I did not sit anybody. People sat where they sat. At some point I looked up and Ray was filling Ruth Ann's water glass without her asking and without either of them noticing. And I had to go into the kitchen for a second. There was an empty chair. I want to be honest about the empty chair, because it would be easy to make it mean something. It was not a gesture. There were 7 chairs worth of people if everybody came, and I had texted my mother on the 19th of December. 4 sentences. I am at the house on the 25th. There will be food around 2. You are welcome. So is Dad. She read it. I could see that she read it. She did not answer. My father came at 4:20. He had a store-bought pie with the price sticker still on it. And he handed it to me at the door with both hands like it was heavier than it was. He sat in that chair. My mother did not come. I am not going to soften that. She did not come. And she did not answer. And I do not know whether she was ashamed or angry or whether some part of her is still waiting for me to say the first thing. I have theories. I am not going to perform them for you. I do not know if I will text her next year. Anybody who tells you they know the answer to that about their own mother is telling you a story they have finished. I have not finished this one. Grant sent him a message at 8 o'clock that night. 3 words. I did not answer it that night. I answered it 3 days later. And what I said is between him and me. That night, after everybody left and the dishwasher was running, I sat at that round table and I opened the shoebox. My grandmother wrote to her sister in Zanesville for 31 years. Most of it is weather and church and who had surgery. One letter is from March of 1994. In it, she says she sold her wedding ring that month to make the rent. One line, in the middle of a paragraph about a neighbor's dog. And then this. Exactly, don't say anything to Sharon about the ring. She's got enough. Sharon is my mother. She was 30 that year, married, with a mortgage, and her mother sold a wedding ring and made sure she never found out. I understand my mother better because of that letter. She came out of a house where money was a shameful secret, and being helped was a thing you hid from your own children. And when her daughter drove up in a truck and handed her a house, some part of her heard it as a bill for everything she had not managed herself. I understand her. I have not forgiven her. Both of those are true at the same time, and I have stopped trying to make one of them cancel the other. Here is the accounting, since I have given you everything else. $312,000 for the house, $4,300 in legal fees, 34 days shut down, and $47,600 I will never get back. $80 to turn my authority back on, $23 to change an address, and $30. $30 is what a combination lockbox costs at a hardware store, and $30 is what all of the rest of it cost me. I still drive. I did not quit, and I am not going to. The truck is paid for, and I am good at this, and I like it. But I come home now, 4 or 5 nights a month, that is all, and that is enough. And there is a bed in the south bedroom and a fan on the floor that I still turn on to sleep. You can buy someone a house. You cannot buy a seat at their table. That is not for sale. It never was, and nobody was ever going to sell me one no matter how many nights I stacked up. And that line people call selfish, the one you draw when you finally stop paying, that is not selfishness. That is just where the kindness has to stop so the kind one can keep living. If you have ever been treated like a bank account by people who share your last name, hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with us for more stories about what it actually costs to stop paying.